Okay, yeah, we're about to be on um our daily action. Um Kirk. If we, okay, yeah, okay, we're officially up. So yeah, today we're gonna be reacting to some various political content. I was gonna get into some Charlie Kirk debate videos, and there seems to be a really good debunking going on with Crowder, so we'll add that to the end. First, we're gonna be watching some Candace Owens, um, and then some Nick Fuentes, then Steven Crowder. Some health stuff if we have time. We're probably gonna be watching it at like 1.5 times speed.
Lot that I would like to speak with you guys about. Can't wait to hear. All right, you guys, we're going to jump right into this with no introduction. There's a lot that I would like to speak with you guys about. Can't wait to hear your feedback. A lot of lies that are being put out there, narratives that I would say are half truths or just misrepresentations entirely. And I don't really see the reason for that. First and foremost, to let you know, last week was not a dream. Charlie Kirk, my friend, is dead. And he was publicly executed. I want to make that clear. Charlie Kirk was publicly executed before the world. And as we are all searching for answers, the ones that are being supplied to us are not making a lot of sense. And some people, I would say, are speaking too much, are speaking on behalf of other people. I don't like it. I will say something that I think brought the world a lot of
Shout
relief,
out to my
also
wife,
sadness. We were grieving with her, was when his wife, Mrs. Erica
pumpkin
Kirk,
chocolate chip
addressed
muffins.
not just the nation, but the entire world. Her words were very powerful. And we just have a very brief portion of her remarks, which you should pursue in their entirety. But here she is.
If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country. In this world, you have no idea. You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry.
Don't know if you guys have watched. Definitely worth a watch. Her full remarks, very strong, very tragic. Glad that it seems like Turning Point is going to be in her hands. Um, she's going to be on mission.
To everyone listening tonight across America, the movement my husband built will not die. It won't. I refuse to let that happen. It will not die.
Beautiful, powerful words. Charlie had just one wife. What we got to see across this weekend is that there were so many people around the world, like she said, who were deeply moved by Charlie Kirk throughout their lives and, of course, have been deeply moved by this tragedy. And what she is describing there, that fire, a lot of us are feeling it. I am definitely feeling it. I had a very tough weekend. A very tough weekend. I will say this, my entire life, I've not been much of a crier. It is not my choice emotion. I'm not a person who bursts into tears, and some people are like that. This weekend, I didn't just cry, I wept. I wept. I wept for Charlie, obviously. I didn't make it through the tribute to him on Friday. And for those of you who wanted to see me in a moment of weakness, that was delivered to you. Fair. Yeah, I watched my friend get shot in the neck. Yeah, that's what happened. I just want to say that he was publicly executed again before the world. The question is why, right? When you are in a state of grief, you go through a lot of emotions. And I'm arriving right now at a lot of anger, the audacity of some people. It has taken much restraint and prayer. And I had to speak with a priest. I had to go to confession. These emotions that I am having, wanting to respond with Charlie in his own words, really. People that are coming forward and saying,
We're not going to get totally into it, but going to confession, I mean, you can confess your sins before Jesus anywhere.
this is what he thought and this is how he should be remembered. It just feels really inappropriate to me. I didn't know what to do other than to scroll
Catholic
through
Church will be a
messages
deep
between
dive
me
another
and
day.
Charlie, regarding which there are a ton of them. And I kept going back and watching the many videos of us dancing to the song Power. And it felt appropriate to reach out to TA, speaking about things, talking about his mode when he wrote the song. You know, when you wrote the song Power, why did we have it as our hype song? Because the song is about the ability to find it within yourself to become what you know you are capable of becoming inside of a matrix, when you just realize everything is dishonest, that everything is performative, that people are dishonest, that they are going to try to stop you from being great. In fact, it's the end of the song. The question that he asks at the end of the song, that's the most important. Ye asks, do you have the power to let power go? Do you have the power to say no to power? You know, I told you guys that Charlie was going through a spiritual transformation at the end, and all of the usual suspects were really angry that I hinted towards that. What do you mean? You're not allowed to say that. They were attacking me, trying to make me fearful, to speak out and speak about things that I know. I'm not feeling very fearful right now. I am, like I said, very angry. And I found, Charlie's favorite portion of the song. I'll show you the text between him and I, because this feels very relevant right now. This is, again, lyrics directly from the song Power, but I just needed time alone with my own thoughts, got treasures in my mind, but couldn't open up my own vault. My childlike creativity, purity, and honesty is honestly being crowded by these grown thoughts. Reality is catching up with me, taking my inner child. I'm fighting for custody with these responsibilities that they entrusted me. That's a moment where he is really speaking about how hard it is. Like when you're saying, no, this is what I believe. And they say, you're not allowed to believe that. You feel like you are fighting for custody of yourself. And I want to be very clear that I believe, in fact, I know that towards the end, Charlie was fighting for custody of himself. I want to say that. I want to say that plainly. And there are lies that are being told and they need to be slapped down right now. There's one person who's been out there acting like he is a widow, just saying the absolute most, tweeting first about what happened to Charlie, following it minute to minute, and doing hits in a foreign country, right? Like making time to do hits on Fox News, 2 of them. Bibi Netanyahu, who's fighting, I think, like an 84 front war with everyone, made a lot of time for Charlie Kirk. You would have thought they were the best of friends, as close as him and Trump were. But I will say I don't recall Erica mentioning Bibi Netanyahu in her speech. The way he's presenting it is like he was, this is just the worst loss for him, but I don't think that that is the truth. In fact, I know for a fact that he is misrepresenting some things that happened there towards the end. So let's at first listen to what Bibi Netanyahu, just one day, less than 24 hours after Charlie died, what Bibi Netanyahu had to say on Fox News. Take a listen.
We're just heartbroken. Myself, my wife, my family, my son, actually, on his 2019 visit to Israel, had lunch with him.
He's pissed.
And his wife, Erica. We're shattered first as human beings because a great human being has been taken from us. He was an extraordinary friend. He said, he wrote me a letter on May 2nd this year. He said, one of my greatest joys as a Christian is advocating for Israel and forming alliances to defend Judeo-Christian civilization. A few weeks before the tragedy yesterday, I called him and I spoke to him and I said, please come to Israel. I invited him to Israel. And sadly, that visit will not take place. But he was a defender of our common Judeo-Christian civilization. He was unbelievably excited to walk in the footsteps of Jesus here. He
The
valued our bond, the bond between
Judeo-Christian
America and
video,
Israel.
we'll have to dive into that.
Did so many things to defend free speech. He had his truth. He stood up for it. But he said, you can come and debate me. He invited that debate. He certainly didn't invite the violence, the horrible violence that tried to silence him. And this is a worldwide problem. The people on the extremes, the Islamists, the radical Islamists, and their union with the ultra progressives, they often speak about human rights. They speak about free speech, but they use violence to try to take down their enemies. Whether it's President Trump, who's been almost assassinated twice, or they try to kill me here too. But they got Charlie Kirk, and it's just heartbreaking.
Why does it seem like he's got a
Who's they,
smirk
Bibi?
that whole time?
Who's they who got Charlie Kirk? We don't have to actually speak conspiracies. I'm just wondering because you said a lot there, but it really sounded like it was about Bibi trying to establish a narrative that we saw reinforced by a lot of people. That Charlie kind of made it almost sound like he died for Israel. I mean, Trump's account even tweeted out a photo of Charlie and an American flag and also an Israeli flag. A little bit of AI used. Like this is just who Charlie was. He says Judeo-Christian values. He spoke to him 2 weeks ago. Again, you would think he was busy fighting this 97,000 front war, but no, he's letting you know that he just randomly picks up the phone and calls Charlie Kirk and invites him to Israel. Why would Bibi do that? It seems like maybe there's a little more to the story. No, there definitely is a little bit more to the story. First and foremost, that letter he is holding up, he is severely misrepresenting. Those sentences are real, but I am calling upon Bibi Netanyahu, the dear friend to Charlie Kirk, to publish the letter's entire contents. Like, don't start with just 2 sentences. Publish the entire thing. You're holding it. I'm saying you're severely misrepresenting the contents, that in May, Charlie was concerned about Israel and their influence on American politics and how they were pushing things that he felt were in conflict with his beliefs, free speech. Here in America, Bibi's holding it up like Charlie just in May said, hey, you know what? I just want to write a love letter to Israel. That's how it was presented. Would you guys agree? That's not how it happened. Now,
That is how it was
regarding that
presented.
phone call and that invite, that also needs to be contextualized. And I'm going to do that. But first, Skylar, can we bring in a clip of Charlie from a month ago speaking about the kind of pressure that he was under? Because I think that will also help to further contextualize this. Take a listen.
I'm an American citizen. Yes, I want Israel to win. Yes, I'm a Christian. But like some of the mess, and you saw, and you've seen how I've been treated, Megan, by some, not all, by some.
No, it's very irritating.
It's
It's been
almost
so
as if
unfair. They were coming after you after Turning Point for, among other things,
it's
that you
so-
had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith isn't allowed to
Questioning my-
criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was
You're not allowed to,
overrepresented.
though. No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time. I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megan. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this. And I could go, I mean, you saw it, Megan. It was trending on Twitter, thousands of tweets and text messages. And if I were to be charitable and generous, I will say the people that are attacking me are in a hyper-paranoid state because they're at war, and war tends to make things black and white, and you're a hammer looking for a nail. So I'm trying to be charitable, Megan. Literally, I'm trying to cut as much slack as I can, right? Like, okay, what would it be like if all of a sudden I'm starting to see a pattern of behavior similar to what my grandparents saw in 1930s Germany online? How would I behave? So that's like my charitable kind of overcompensation spirit. At the same time, I'm like, but it's not defensible to be dumb, right?
No, it's not defensible to be dumb, and he was under an increasing amount of pressure. Not just people telling him, oh, well, you know, I'm upset with who you're inviting, but flat out telling him that he was not allowed to invite certain people to his events. They were threatening to pull out money. Charlie was getting a lot of really nasty text messages, and many of them pertaining to Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. But Tucker Carlson was really the focus when it came to America Fest. How could Charlie allow these debates about Israel to take place? How could he allow Dave Smith, who, by the way, is Jewish, how could how could Charlie allow this other position to meet the stage? Because obviously when people start to hear the debates, what Dave Smith is saying sounds so rational, but it was up to Charlie to not allow those things to happen. And that amount of pressure towards the end, as you see that conversation he had with Meghan was just a month before he lost his life, really, I would say, reached a pinnacle of sorts on the matter of what Tucker Carlson actually said on that stage. Tucker Carlson, while he was on that stage at Turning Point, brought up Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman is a billionaire, obviously. He is also an extremely litigious billionaire. And Bill Ackman was on Charlie about comments that Tucker Carlson had made on that stage. Tucker Carlson specifically asked the question, where does Bill Ackman's money come from? You know, who is this guy? Actually, who is this guy that has this much influence? And like I said, Bill Ackman was not happy about this. And so I would like to contextualize Bibi. Again, these are things Bibi brought up publicly, which he didn't have to. He didn't have to bring up the letter. He didn't have to bring up the phone call, but he chose to do this less than 24 hours after Charlie Kirk was shot. Personally, Bibi, I would have appreciated if you guys used all of your spyware, you'd spy on us for years, to maybe track down the killer. But I guess this is where you thought it was best. Do a little propaganda for Israel would be better than us helping us track down the killer. But anyway, so Bibi Netanyahu in that phone call, which took place was a couple of weeks ago before Charlie lost his life. Charlie was in the Hamptons, and he had more than one event, but he had essentially what was staged, an intervention was staged by Bill Ackman. Because Charlie's rational thoughts about Israel were a no-no. This is not the route that you should be going on. And Charlie was surrounded by his friends, his quote-unquote friends. Bill Ackman was very upset, and threats were made. That is what I am told, and I will tell you that I am very happy for Bill Ackman to dispute this narrative. In fact, he was asked to dispute this narrative. Max Blumenthal went out to him today, and Bill Ackman came back and said, I have receipts I can show you, and he did not provide the receipts. This is not how it went down. I know it went down this way. I'm waiting for one of them to go on record and to say that it didn't go down this way. It was at this time that Bibi Netanyahu was called and Charlie was invited to Israel. This was an under duress situation, I would say, because I've been in these situations before. When I started asking very sensible questions about Israel, as someone who had dedicated her political life to supporting Israel, many times alongside Charlie Kirk, I was met with the very same pressure. And just like Charlie was being invited to Israel, I was invited somewhere else. And when this arrived to me, it felt like a threat. You know, I gotta tell you, it felt like a threat. Like, not like, hey, come here and we can educate you because you're my friend. More like, this is your last chance. That's how it felt to me. I can't speak to how it felt to Charlie. And I know that Charlie was offered a ton of money in this moment. A ton of money. Maybe would fund it, you know, spend tons of money. And Turning Point, I guess, if it needed to go to a higher level, would have gone to an even higher level than it already was at. And I know for a fact that Charlie denied that funding. That Charlie denied, and what Bibi didn't include there, he declined to go to Israel for, I would describe this as like, you know, re-education camp. You know, we've seen it. You made an uh-oh, but we can help you. You know, we just need you to come out to Auschwitz and take a picture. Yeah. We just need you to come to the Holocaust Museum and take a photo. We just need you to go to Israel and we can make this better. Charlie said no to Bibi. Okay. Bill Ackman, if you would like to dispute that, I would love to hear what you say happened, because our sources and what we have, it's solid. Okay. There were conversations that took place, messages that were sent at that time, and they are solid. So I decided another person that was there, and I am not surprised this person was there. If you've been listening to my show, Seth Dillon, I was going to go to Seth Dillon, and I decided to message him last night about this Hampton.
It'd be really interesting. Charlie and Candace were really close. In Erica's address, is pretty vague in some areas. I wonder if she's the source of some of this. She's been giving access to the phone, what have you. It'd be really interesting to hear Erica's thoughts on what Candace is
meeting. And Seth Dillon, who is normally very quick with a response, has not yet been able to respond. I'll show you this text message chain. And I want to be clear, I am not someone who normally publicizes text messages. But my friend was shot in the neck, and I'm just not really in the state right now to be polite when it comes to the answers that I am demanding, okay? This is me out to Seth Dillon last night. I sent him Bill Ackman's tweets because, he tweeted, I feel incredibly privileged to have spent a day and shared a meal with Charlie Kirk this summer. He was a giant of a man. I said, any comment on this one, Seth? He didn't answer last night. This morning I said, need a comment ASAP, please. He didn't answer. Then I followed that up and I said, trying again here, you were present when Ackman lost his mind on Charlie and when Bibi invited him to Israel and Charlie refused. Text messages immediately following this meeting are circulating. I find Ackman's statement, as though the meeting was somehow cordial, to be incredibly disturbing. Are you at all disturbed by that tweet? Do you feel, as I do, that this tweet significantly betrays the defined purpose and mood of his, and I presume your, final meeting with Charlie Kirk, ? He was unable to speak to me, but he did place some frantic calls to Turning Point USA. Yeah. You see, I went out to Seth, but I also went out to 2 other people who were at this meeting, and nobody is willing to go on record. They're all messaging each other, trying to figure out a coordinated response to say that, no, this was all quite cordial, but no one wants to go on record and describe it as cordial because they know someone's leaking, because someone's got a guilty conscience about what happened at the Hamptons. So I will again put it out there, Seth, Bill Ackman, and to the other individuals who I have not yet named, but who are going to be named later this week, who were at the Hamptons when Charlie was put under pressure, when Bibi Netanyahu called him and invited him to Israel, again, in a move that wouldn't happen to me, and it wasn't Bibi Netanyahu, felt to me like a laced threat. I am inviting you guys, I will give you my platform, actually, to come clear matters up and tell us what really happened, because, I think Charlie was definitely on the brink of changing some of his perspectives. And I can tell you factually, Charlie was praying the rosary. Charlie was going to mass. One of my last conversations with Charlie was me joking with him saying, just make the last step, okay? You are, I said specifically, you're too smart to be a Protestant. Just take the last step, Charlie. He says, ha. You're speaking about Mary. And typically when those steps start taking place, you stop referring to yourself, as I did, as a Judeo-Christian. Again, it is mystifying why, Bibi was out there doing the absolute most to make sure that Charlie was basically remembered as, I would argue, like a Jew. Has not been yet mentioned. I didn't hear that. Erica was very clear that Charlie was a Christian. And I believe Charlie obviously was very much a Christian, and that things are not being told truthfully. In fact, I will also call upon, since we're having fun, Turning Point USA to release the audio of what Charlie Kirk, because I was in communication with Charlie at this time, because I knew exactly which donors were pressuring him and why, exactly which people that they were insisting Charlie allowed to speak at his event and why, when Charlie did not necessarily want those people to speak at his event, okay? I'm calling upon Turning Point to release the footage of what Charlie said to Tucker Carlson before he hit the stage, before, all of that craziness and the response to Tucker Carlson's remarks played out. Charlie was mic'd. Surely Tucker Carlson was mic'd. I know Charlie's mic'd the entire time at those events, so I'm asking for everyone to just release Charlie in his own words. I feel like that's pretty fair, right? Let's stop saying how Charlie felt, and instead, if you're going to hold up the letter, release it in its entirety, okay? Why don't you release your messages, Bill?
Would be really
I'll release mine. Let's all just be very
audio?
forthcoming about what took place. In fact, I'm calling upon Tucker Carlson to speak about that. I know what Charlie said to him, and I'm sure Tucker Carlson won't lie about it. What did Charlie say to you? Dave Smith, what did Charlie say to you? What was Charlie? Did he seem like he was treading in the direction? Like, do we feel like what Bibi is saying is honest, a representation of what Charlie was going through? This is what I want. I think that the thing that we need here, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Now, does all of this mean that Bibi Netanyahu and that this somehow proves that Israel was involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk? No, we have no evidence of that. We can't say that because there is no evidence of that. But I don't like little lies. That's what I will say. Something that I always say in my household is, when there is one lie, there's 20. There's no reason to lie. Bibi could have gone on Fox News and he could have told the truth. He could have said truthfully that Charlie Kirk has always loved Israel. He has always loved Israel as the Holy Land. He's been here many times. And throughout his career, he has been a faithful supporter of Israel. But that's not what he said. Okay. He talks about the phone call and didn't give it the proper context. He held up the letter and didn't give it the proper context. And lies by severe omission, I'd like to be very clear, are lies. Lies by severe omission are lies. You're not going to gaslight us and tell us to shut up or call us anti-Semitic for pointing out the fact that Charlie was having a change of heart about the tactics that Israel was using in America, and that he felt when he had left that meeting that he had effectively been blackmailed. Again, my platform is yours, Seth Dillon. My platform is yours, Bill Ackman. So if you want to clarify it, we can do it in front of millions, okay? And I think that that's what people deserve, because everyone has PTSD. We watched Charlie get shot in the throat. That feels a little bit symbolic. It feels like they wanted us to know that his voice was problematic. Again, I don't know who they is. After we take this brief break, we're going to go through the investigation, which seems to have a lot of inconsistencies and holes in it. And we're definitely not yet at the bottom of what, in fact, took place. But I do know that I severely distrust people who rush to misrepresent things. And it's not a good sign when somebody has to ask you, as Greta Van Susteren asked Bibi Netanyahu in his secondary hit regarding Charlie Kirk's assassination. It's not a good sign if somebody even has to ask if you did have anything to do with the assassination. It doesn't make you a great person, okay? And that's what she asked him. Take a listen.
Before I let you go, I want you to address one thing, and just the absurdity of it, some of the internet rumors that somehow Israel is behind the Charlie Kirk murder. And, I don't believe it for 1 second, but I want you to, make a statement. It's so absurd.
That's insane. That's insane. Israel also changes the orbit of the moon. Israel pushes the sun. I mean, the whole thing is, it's not only insane, I think it's so absurd, so stupid, and so ridiculous. You can't believe that people are saying this. They just found the perpetrator. They'll get to the bottom of this. But they go, they have no limits. When you hate Jews, when you hate the Jewish state, you're willing to say anything and promote all these absurd rumors. And by the way, they're willing to kill us all the time. I mean, that's what they're doing. And over the centuries, when Jews, especially in the Middle Ages, the horrific Middle Ages, the worst things were said about Jews you couldn't possibly believe. We were poisoning the wells. We were drinking the blood of Christian children. You name it. I mean, these things. That continued actually up to the Holocaust. The Nazis said the same thing. We're carrying vermin. We're spreading disease. And people believed it. And every time they believed it, this was a prelude to a greater and greater massacre, culminating with the worst massacre of them all, the Holocaust.
Well, he's mentioned the Holocaust. Guess we can't prod the narrative any further, guys. Holocaust. So everybody's just stopped talking about anything. I mean, hey, he's the victim. It's absurd. It's just absurd. The Holocaust happened. You heard him. We're sick of this shit. We really are. And there will be no narrative that I will not prod when it comes to figuring out why people are lying about the state that Charlie was in when it came to the topic of Israel. Again, you can examine Charlie in his own words. He was starting to talk about topics that you're not really allowed to talk about when you take money and big checks are being written. And the pressure was increasing every single day. In fact, he was telling the truth even about Jeffrey Epstein. Take a listen.
Epstein, with his little friend Ghislaine and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies, but there was something else going on here. Epstein was not some sort of whiz-kid hedge fund manager. Epstein was playing a part. Epstein was a LARPer. Epstein was cast for a specific role, and he played it really well. The sweatpants and the Harvard jacket, the kind of disheveled hair, looking as if he was so smart and above the clouds that he was doing advanced mathematical equations on the back of napkins. But if you actually go into some of the videos of people that met with Epstein at the time, they said he was awfully unimpressive when it came to finance and markets and economics. And it's nothing new that if you're in the intel agencies, you want to try and get as much blackmail on powerful people as possible. Easy, not hard. And this is no longer just speculation. First of all, the evidence that shows that Epstein was a creation of either Mossad, Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, Saudi intelligence, or maybe he was just a hired gun. Maybe he was just a guy that countries would go to and park a couple $100 million and say, hey, can you get one of the members of the royal family with a 13-year-old so we can get them to do what we want to do? Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis. Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was not a hedge fund manager. Jeffrey Epstein was a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation against the most powerful people on the planet.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It seems to conflict with Bibi's narrative a little bit. Yeah, just a tiny bit. I do want to say this. It's important because I am angry. I will obviously, I pray to move on from this phase, but it's a fire in my belly right now. To those of you who think that you are going to replace Charlie Kirk, okay? Kings are born. You don't just get to depose and tell us that we're going to follow this individual, okay? I'm one of the Masons of Turning Point USA. You put a shill in Charlie Kirk's chair, in Charlie Kirk's company, and you try to tell us to follow that individual, I will be an enemy of you. There will be nothing that can stop me, okay? And I want you guys to say, this is not a threat, this is a promise. There will be nothing that can stop me. I will release every single text message. So to those of you who are trying that, I'm seeing the messages, I am telling you to back off right now. Like right now, don't do it, okay? Don't you think about it. I know exactly who you are. I know exactly who you were that were exerting pressure. Don't you pretend to be noble now and say nice things about Charlie Kirk and think you're going to slide into his chair, okay? Over my dead body, which I'm sure can be arranged. Now, I'm going to take a pause. We're going to go to some sponsors, and we're going to get into what we are being told by the agencies. There are definitely some holes. Maybe more is coming out. First, this is fantastic that Preborn is doing this. Every heartbeat born for the day will run to change values. Yeah, kills it, and they've told Michael Savage had to say about everything that what we know about use promo code Candace. Okay, let's get into what we know about the Charlie Kirk assassination thus far in terms of what the authorities are telling us. First, I just want to toss it to Michael Savage because the energy of this, what Michael Savage had to say about everything that we're hearing, is pretty much all of us right now. Take a listen.
The so-called FBI, something's wrong. I know I shouldn't do this. I'm risking an awful lot to go up against this FBI, the MAGA FBI. Something's very wrong with what I just heard. I mean, I watched it. I was hoping that they had caught the bastard who shot Charlie. So we saw a video of a person jumping off the roof. It looked very legitimate to me. However, there was no rifle in his hand. Now, the Mauser does not break down very easily, incidentally, for those of you who know weapons. Something's wrong with the whole thing. They're trying to claim he removed the barrel from the Mauser and fit the receiver and stock in his backpack and barrel in his pants, like all in 2 seconds. It is not easy to remove a Mauser barrel or index it after reinstalling and remain accurate. We are not hearing or seeing reality. And by the way, the photo of the rifle allegedly left in the woods has the barrel installed. So we're supposed to believe a guy is on the run after killing Charlie Kirk, and he pauses in the woods to reinstall a barrel, and then he leaves it for us to find, the FBI to find. I don't believe a word of it. I shouldn't.
Not even just that. So he has it disassembled, climbs up onto the roof, takes the shot, and then he's trying to escape the campus to run from the authorities. He takes the time to disassemble it, hides it in his clothes, so that's why on the video of him jumping off the roof, it's not shown. And then while he's running in the woods, he reassembles the weapon and conveniently leaves it. That makes no sense.
Do this. I know I'm putting myself at risk, but I can't take it anymore. I can't take the bullshit from this fucking government. It's lying to us. Something's wrong. Something's so wrong. It's sickening.
Sickening is definitely the right adjective, I think, to describe how a lot of us are feeling. And all I know how to do is to gather information, to research, and to investigate. And nothing is making sense. Now, it could not be making sense because we've not arrived at the conclusion. The FBI, I will say, has recently come out and said they're looking for another person. Good, because what we have so far obviously cannot be it. I feel, I was insisting that everybody read that book, Chaos, about the Charles Manson murders. And what we learn from that book is that if the government does want to hide something, what they do is they give you so much information that you don't even know what's real. So many different possible ways that things could have gone down, so many different manners, so many people speaking, so many publications publishing. And it's just meant to be chaotic, to drive you crazy and to just go, okay, I'm just going to accept whenever the authority says something and not prod any further. We can't allow that to happen here. I won't allow that to happen here because something terrible has traumatized the world, okay? And I feel as though when it comes to this, the media, the government, the talking heads, everyone is confusing us about what actually took place with Charlie Kirk, this event, how it got set up. I even would like to know who picked the venue, okay? Here's what we know thus far, and I will tell you who the exact source is and what video they presented. So the first bit of proof regarding that day happened at 8:07 a.m. According to TMZ, they have footage, and we're going to show you it, which shows a man at 8:07 a.m., so hours before the shooting, wearing a maroon t-shirt and light shorts, as you were seeing on your screen right now, hands in his pockets, that is just walking outside of university grounds, okay? Now, Governor Cox tells us that at 8:29, which is an interesting timeline, Governor Cox tells us that is when the shooter, Tyler Robinson, arrived at UVU campus in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, and a black hat with a white logo. So essentially, he's saying that what that person we saw walking down the street right there arrived on campus at 8:29. I'm going to allow you to hear Governor Cox say that himself. Take a listen.
Investigators reviewed additional video footage from UVU surveillance and identified Robinson arriving on UVU campus in a gray Dodge Challenger at approximately 8:29 a.m. on September 10th, in which he is observed on video in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes.
So what's interesting, already confusing to me, is that TMZ shows him already walking. We're supposed to believe he parked his car and then walked onto campus. They're saying that after that video that you just saw of him walking, he got into his car and then drove to campus, and then at 8:29 p.m. on campus is when he arrives. Already confusing, but let's just keep going. We don't need to poke holes. Let's just keep going with the narrative. Then we're back to TMZ, and they release that at 11:49 a.m., they have footage of the shooter who has now changed his outfit. We're supposed to gather that, again, on a doorbell cam, and he's in a different outfit. So this is 11:49 a.m. Charlie Kirk has not yet been shot. Take a look at this. Okay, and for those of you that are listening to this on audio, you are going to see someone who appears to be limping, okay? So maybe he changed his outfit at some point, and now he's limping. And the idea that we're seeing floated is that he's limping because he's holding the gun in his pants. Okay, that's kind of what's been floated. Okay, that's not particularly come from the feds. I don't believe so, but he's limping now, and he's got on a different outfit. Okay, 11:52 a.m. And we were actually going to check this, by the way, but I think that we had the FBI say that was when he arrived on campus. Maybe that's not accurate. But, so let me just skip off of that, because Skylar, we should actually look to research that. But at 12:23 p.m. is when Charlie Kirk is shot. Okay. And 12:23 p.m. is when in that same minute is when we have footage that shows us that as the crowd ducks, and it's blurry, the shooter runs across the rooftop. I'm going to tell you why that's significant. So 12:23, Charlie Kirk is shot, and we are going to have an angle of that and the image of the black person in black rather, that is running across the rooftop. Take a look at this. They're down, clearly. And right away, look at that, okay? And we have another, so the footage shows us, there's another actually clip that I was looking for, Skylar, there, that actually shows him running across the rooftop. You guys may have seen it. The reason why that footage is problematic, as you start to see them ducking and then you see the shooter immediately start moving across the rooftop, is that their narrative is that he disassembled the gun and then started running. So that's a bit confusing to us of how he was able to do that so quickly. An unbelievable amount of hunters, guns, people that reached out to me and said, that just didn't happen. They have, exactly as Michael said, that did not happen. There is no way that happened. That cannot be accurate. Then, and this is obviously the craziest part of everything, we have Decoy Boy, right? So it happens and suddenly this guy, George Zinn, gets arrested. He's making noise. He's signaling that he's somehow shot the guy. And at 12:52, it gets announced that the suspect is in custody. So nobody needs to look around anymore because this suspect is in custody. But actually, I guess George Zinn just does that. He just does that, I guess, like just wants people to think he's done something but he hasn't actually done anything. That, again, to me feels like he's a decoy. Like more people are involved in this. And I will say that. We don't know, but we know that something's wrong with this. Then at 12:29 p.m., we have TMZ showing us that there's a person running through the backyard. They are saying this appears to be the suspect running. Okay, now we're going to show you that clip. It is very grainy. So they're alleging that that's him. We couldn't confirm that, and the feds have not confirmed that. But it does show you that someone's running across the back. Again, that's at 12:29 p.m. I don't know. We don't know. I'll give you some other facts that you should probably know just in general that that has been thus far confirmed. The weapon, they say, was found in the woods, and it was wrapped by a dark towel. Okay, now, when they gave us a photo of that weapon, it was fully assembled. So this is kind of what Michael Savage is saying. He's saying, okay, so then they reassembled it, or maybe the feds did. Maybe they're going to clarify that they reassembled it for a photograph, but we are told that it was found wrapped in a dark towel. Then we have been told that a screwdriver was found on the roof. So they're sticking to this implication that he perhaps undid this gun while he was on the rooftop, and he, wanted to make sure he unscrewed it with the screwdriver, left the screwdriver behind, but took the gun, but then left the gun in the woods. Okay. Then we get, and this has not been contextualized. I can't wait until it's contextualized. We get photos that are the shooter. This is when the FBI came out and said he's in a stairwell. We don't know exactly where that stairwell is. He's in outfit number 2. So the outfit change has happened. Okay. There's no timeline again, but we can discern that there is no weapon that is in his pant leg, because we can see him bending one leg in one photo, and we can see him bending the other leg in another photo. So we're unclear about this. What is clear is that there is a ton of cameras on this campus. There is a lot of footage that they could release to make the public feel better about this.
Hundreds of
tons of different angles. I don't know why we're getting grainy shots at all. There have been tons of people online going through the tech stack of UVU campus and saying, like, hey, why are we getting grainy? Why don't you give us clear images? In fact, you guys could show us an image here, 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 here. They're not doing that. They're just going with this like grainy image and saying that's it. And you can get this grainy image, but we can't tell you much more. Now, again, it's an open investigation. They're under a lot of pressure. There is no question. I'm certainly not going to let this go. And I want the public to not let this go, because you were spiritually impacted by watching a man be publicly executed, and you need to keep that energy and understand that something is very wrong here. Nothing they are saying feels good to me. Honestly, the thing that they said that felt the best to me is when they said that there's probably somebody else involved. That sounds about right. 2 people, maybe these aren't even the same people. Maybe the guy in the maroon is not the same as the guy in the black shirt. That would make sense, because why change your outfit? Both of these look like you would blend in on a college campus, so why are you blending in twice? Does that make any sense to you? Why would you change your outfit? It's like a random fashion show while you're going to murder someone. I just want to change my outfit for funsies. And then we hear that Tyler Robinson, when he is apprehended, it is communicated to us that he is wearing the maroon outfit. Now, I want to be clear. They said this was 33 hours later. So he changed his outfit, I mean, ostensibly because he wants to avoid detection, would be the only thing that I think is reasonable to assume. But then he changes back into the outfit that he was wearing before the shooting. For what reason? 33 hours later, like no shower time? He just wanted them to know that it was him on the camera. That's not clear to me. Why are we changing outfits? Are we just 2 different people? I think it's reasonable to ask that question. Are there 2 different people that are involved? Another thing that's not clear to me is that the story that we were told was that Tyler Robinson allegedly, after speaking with the pastor, his dad turned him in, Bill Ackman, probably $1 million, right? Thanks, Bill. he really cared about Charlie, and that money is now going to the father of this child, who, after prayer and speaking to a pastor, they're saying, okay, well, we then, you know, he turned himself in. That we were told he turned himself in. Now we're being told that actually he hasn't confessed. So I'm just wondering, how do you turn yourself in without confessing? Because if I say my kid did it, that's enough for an arrest. What if the kid says he didn't do it? I didn't do it. Dad says you did. Okay, how did they arrest him without a confession? I'm going to show you Governor Cox's statement where he says that the kid has not confessed. Take a listen.
I know you heard that report by Matt Gutman and this latest reporting in the New York Times that some of the suspect's acquaintances were allegedly talking to him online and joking and thought they recognized him from those early photos. Can you tell us anything about that this morning or anything further on the investigation?
Well, all we can confirm is that those conversations definitely were happening, and they did not believe it was actually him. It was all joking until he until he admitted that it actually was him.
And anything new on the investigation? You say he admitted that, confessed?
No, not again. He has not confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating. But all the people around him are cooperating, and I think that's very important. There were reports yesterday that we can confirm that his roommate was indeed a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female. That's information that the FBI had mentioned yesterday. We can confirm that as well, and that he is cooperating with authorities as well.
Okay, so I'm just not entirely clear on this confession element. Did the pastor just say he did it? Did the father say he did it, but they didn't have any proof? Again, this is obviously everyone's investigating. We yield to them. Do I think this kid was involved somehow? Yeah. Do I think he did this alone? Absolutely not. The story makes entirely no sense. And then there's this random Discord over Discord. Okay, so Governor Cox came out and told us that there were messages about the rifle drop point. Okay, Discord says not the same thing. Let's listen to Governor Cox say that on this social media app, Discord, they were discussing the rifle drop point. Take a listen.
Investigators identified an individual as the roommate of Robinson. Investigators interviewed that roommate, who stated that his roommate, referring to Robinson, made a joke on Discord. Investigators asked if he would show them the messages on Discord. He opened it and showed several messages to investigators and allowed investigators to take photos of the screen as each message was shown by Robinson's roommate. These photos consisted of various messages, including content of messages between the phone contact named Tyler with an emoji icon and Robinson's roommate's device. The content of these messages included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler, stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in a towel. The messages also refer to engraving bullets and a mention of a scope and the rifle being unique. Messages from the contact Tyler also mentioned that he had changed outfits.
Okay. So he changed outfits. Again, unclear why he did that. Unclear why he would then put the outfit back on 33 hours later. Most people just like shower within that time. I did receive contact from one of Tyler Robinson's classmates, and they said that was the strangest part to them. They told me that was the strangest part, the 33-hour putting on an outfit that he had on 33 hours early, because they described him as remarkably tidy. He was a tidy individual. So they that flagged them as weird. Just seems like a little extra work. Again, unnecessary, completely unnecessary. You're getting nothing out of changing your outfits. We have a statement from Discord, which kind of disputes that. Discord says, in the course of our investigation, we identified a Discord account associated with the suspect, but have found no evidence that the suspect planned this incident or promoted violence on Discord, a spokesperson said in the statement. Again, maybe they need more time, and they're going to get more time. They're going to get a lot of time, because it will be never that I let this go. It will be absolutely never that I let this go. Everything just spiritually feels very wrong here. Yeah. It feels like we are being lied to by who? I'm not sure. Are there some good guys? Of course, there's always good guys in government, but there are too many bad guys in government for me to feel good about this. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we are obviously going to continue to follow this, to tighten up this timeline with the most up-to-date information that we can possibly have, everything that we could possibly learn about the father that is involved in this. I want to know more about the father. He's being described as a hero. He turned his son in. Okay, I don't trust anything right now. Okay, I trust absolutely nothing. I think everyone needs to be investigated. Every person that is even mentioned should be investigated. We have a right to do that, and we're going to continue to do that. All right, guys, before I get into some of your comments, I want to remind you guys about Pure Talk, because when was the last time that you head to Pure? If that debt is piling up, but has to get started with these, we are for every single USA to ensure and make a donation and involve conviction. Kind of trained to manipulate me into not speaking. Now is not the time. No, it's the time. There you go. I hope that helps. A lot of people, your friend die in that way. It was so violent. I went alone at the PBD Live podcast. I stood there talking to a woman for the whole hour the show was going on. Talked to her about my heritage. She is Charlie's wife, Erica. She made me feel welcome when I was alone. God be with the Kirks. If there was anything that could rile Charlie up, it's questioning his moral integrity. Yeah, they are very, very good people. Charlie and Erica are fantastic.
So, lots of holes in the official narrative. No doubt it seems like this guy was involved. To what capacity? Also, why are they lying about the way that Charlie was evolving on topic of Israel? The last broadcast that he gave, talking about how the secular Jews have contributed to the Marxist leftist ideology that is rampant in the United States, asking tough questions to Ben Shapiro. I'm sure that we'll hear more of that on the Israel-Jewish front from Nick Fuentes. What? Did Israel kill Charlie Kirk? The conspiracy versus the official story. I think we're going to delve into. No.
According to a person back on the tree, it's the repair, the real life. That's what. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you today. With you tonight on Monday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Tonight, we're going to be picking up on our coverage last week of the murder of Charlie Kirk, major political assassination last week. And it's been a long weekend. I didn't do a show on Friday. It's been a few days, but actually the timing is good. I think it gave everybody a chance to think on this a little bit and sleep on it. It is, I have to say, before we get into the topics tonight, just a general note. And this is something that maybe people haven't realized or thought about too much, but I was thinking about it this afternoon. We should actually be grateful, in a sense, for what we haven't seen so far, which is more political violence. I think about the last time we spoke, the last time I did a show, and it was my biggest show yet. We had a lot of people tune in to see what I had to say about it, and I struck a very conciliatory tone. As I said on Thursday night, Charlie Kirk is a former rival of mine. I considered him an opponent for many years and a rival, and I took the opportunity on Thursday to make my best attempt to lower the temperature. And I know that phrase is getting a bad rap. A lot of people want to do the opposite. They want to turn the temperature up. But on Wednesday and Thursday, when everybody was still reeling from the tragedy, I really do believe we were looking over the cliff. People recognize how significant what happened on Wednesday was. The feelings were very raw. The nature of it, I think, is unprecedented in modern times. And my honest-to-God expectation last week is that we would see retaliatory violence. We would see copycat attacks. We would see more bloodshed.
I thought that too. I remember talking with Katie about how I think this might push people over the edge, people on the extreme right. Thankful that we haven't seen that. I definitely think it's been radicalizing. I think it's been activating, but praise God that it's not been in a violent way.
And I have to say, before we even get into some of the analysis tonight, and like I said, trying to pick up where we left off on Thursday and talk a little bit more about what has happened, what has been happening, I do just want to say I'm very grateful, and I think we should all be grateful that we haven't seen any more bloodshed. And I really do believe that is a testament to the fact, the reality, of what we talked about last week, which is that our side, is fundamentally different than the other side. And as time has passed and the days have gone by, we have had a chance to process the murder, this brutal, horrific public execution. We've had a chance to think about it and deal with it in our own way and cope with it. And I said on Thursday, I think the reason that this hit home for a lot of people, including and especially me, and honestly, I'm surprised that it did because I really did not like Charlie Kirk. The reason that it hit home is because we have been assaulted by wave after wave in America and outside of America, in Gaza, by graphic and visceral depictions of evil. That's what that is. If you were distraught or upset, shaken, disturbed, if you felt darkness, that's because we came face to face with pure evil last week. And I'm not just talking about the brutal killing, which took place in front of thousands of young people and then the whole world, but then we also saw the nihilistic justifications, celebrations, the indifference, the apathy. People that work as nurses, teachers, people in our community, next door neighbors, people in proximity to us, they celebrated the violence. There's a word for that. It's evil. It's a lack of charity.
100%.
It's a lack of mercy. It's a lack
100%.
of humanity. They are denying the humanity of innocent
He's
people.
spitting.
And that's why it was so devastating. And it is a poignant reminder about that dichotomy, that the response to not only Charlie Kirk's murder, but also the shocking indifference, callous indifference to it by the left, is faith. The response from our side, because unfortunately that's what it is now, it's come to that. When it comes to issues like murder, there are sides. Our side, which still believes that human life is sacred and murder is wrong, and our neighbors' lives are not ours to take, even if we disagree with what they say. Our side that believes that, our response to the brutality, to our encounter with evil, was prayer vigils. Prayer vigils. People turned out at state capitals, intersections, churches. The pews were flooded. People attended vigils that they volunteered to set up and create. People offered up their prayers. There were unbelievable numbers of young people signing up to create Turning Point chapters and get involved in other ways politically. And you compare that to the other side? So much comparing and contrasting, isn't there, these days? When ICE came down in Los Angeles, what did they do? Burn cars, drop scooters on police cars, burn the American flag. When George Floyd died 5 years ago, what did they do? Loot liquor stores, phone stores, burn down the city. When Charlie Kirk was horrifically murdered for no reason at all, for no good reason, not that there is a good reason, but for such a ridiculous, petty reason because he did partisan debates at colleges, when half the country seemed to rise up instinctually to justify and celebrate the violence, the right wing, by the way, would have been every bit justified in pursuing vengeance. A pound of flesh for a pound of flesh, an eye for an eye, because enough is enough. They would have been every bit justified. This is a big country of 350 million people, and you know what? The right wing has all the guns. The right wing makes up the majority of the police, the military. People could have sought retribution. And some were calling for that. I think most were calling for the opposite. But there was not one instance of reprisal, not one of retaliation. And even in the vigils for Charlie Kirk, which were interrupted by these shit-eating leftists who showed up to taunt and mock and ridicule the organizers, they were treated with mercy. They weren't beaten to death. They weren't killed on the spot. They were apprehended, but with restraint and with mercy, because that's who we are. And I think in many ways that was vindicating. And I felt a sense of reassurance, actually, this weekend when I saw that. Because I'm going to be honest, on Thursday, I didn't know how I would approach the show. I had a lot of mixed feelings, as I know you all did. I know, like you, part of me felt that there needed to be a crushing and brutal response that matched the gravity of what they did. And the other part of me, and some part of me felt like this was naive.
I had those same feelings. You know, it was like one of the things that I talked about with Katie was how there was this, the enemy was just using it as a way to like compromise everyone's personal integrity to try to seize vengeance for themselves or to cheer on or be supportive of that rather than being merciful. And he was like playing on our emotions that way. But it is vindicating, and it's awesome to see that there anything retributive. Is that the word? Retribution based.
But another part of me said, that's just not right. The gospel is so unequivocal. We forgive not 7 times, but 7 times, 70 times. Forgive them, they don't know what they do. It could not be more clear. And I talked a little bit on Thursday about why that is, and part of it is political. One of the things I thought about this past week is this how we solve problems? We disagree with each other, so we go out and murder and kill. Where does that leave us down the road? We're going to have a society of warlords, the most brutal, the most cruel, the most evil. They will be the strongest, they will rise to the top. What kind of society does that look like? It's a very ugly one. And I thought about Christianity in particular, and you think about how our religion has survived for 2,000 years. It's ironic. Some people clipped my show last week and they said I was sounding like a Muslim. How did our religion survive? How did our religion thrive under persecution in the period of the early church? And there's a one-word answer to that question. Our religion, just like this movement, which is inspired by our religion, it grows by witness. It grows by the witness of the piety and the faith and the love and the sacrifice of the Christians. And, you know, I said it on Thursday, and I'm going to double down on it again tonight. And some people said this makes me a hypocrite. This is contradictory with things I've said in the past. But we were a witness on Wednesday to Charlie Kirk being gunned down like a martyr. And look at what the witness to Charlie Kirk has turned into. When you see the real-life testimonials, the videos from young people, from teenagers, from college students, from young men, from young women, and honest to God, I've been touched by it. All throughout the past week, I have seen countless Instagram reels, TikToks of young men and young women. And you know what they've said? They said, Charlie Kirk inspired me to go back to church on Sunday. He inspired me to be a better man. He inspired me to be more honest, to be courageous, to stand up for what I believe in, peacefully. And so whoever took his life on Wednesday, and we'll talk about that tonight, that's the subject of the show, whoever took his life on Wednesday, I hope whoever it is, whether it's the suspect in custody, Tyler Robinson, who is innocent until proven guilty, or maybe it was some other force, or there were accomplices, whoever was involved, whoever cheered it on, I hope they see what they created. And I hope they see that what they did backfired. You killed one person who, by the way, I didn't even really care for. One person who, up until he was shot on Wednesday, I didn't even respect that much. And I doubted his sincerity. And I thought that what he did was silly. They shot one person, but then they inspired millions of people. And that's not an understatement. That's not rhetoric. The witness to his truth-telling, to his character, even if he was imperfect, even if he didn't live up to it all the time, even if there were contradictions, all people are filled with contradictions. All people do good and evil. All people are hypocrites. Life makes hypocrites of us all. And those that aspire to virtue will be hypocrites because we're flawed men and women. But the witness to who he tried to be, what he aspired to be, that has inspired millions more to grow closer to God and to suffocate and overcome evil with good, with light, not with retaliation, not by going to their level, not by murdering each other with our words or literally with bullets, but to suffocate and overcome hopelessness, cynicism, hatred with actual love, with actual benevolence, actual magnanimity. And so for anybody that thinks it was a lot of hollow words last week and a lot of sentiment, you know, what is real about what happened is the millions and millions of people who were touched by it. And believe it or not, that means something in itself. That in itself is a testament. And it's an important part of my monologue last week, and I said this last week, a lot of people have criticized me since. It's kind of shocking. Many people praised me for sort of putting our differences aside and saying nice things about Charlie Kirk. Other people said, well, you didn't like him. Isn't it cowardly to not attack him now that he's dead or something? But I genuinely do mean it, that seeing how he has touched so many lives, and sadly, you never realize that until someone's gone. And there's something heartbreaking about that, all by itself, isn't there? We all had feelings about Charlie Kirk and his work. He had feelings about it. He'll never know. I hope he knows, but since he has died, he will never know. I hope he sees looking down from heaven just how much love there was for him, just how many people he touched. And now that he's passed, I've seen it, and I'm a witness to it. And that is real. So I think that out of this horrific tragedy, something that, like I said last week, it was the unthinkable. I can't shake it. What I felt on Wednesday, it was like a nightmare. That's the only thing I can compare it to it. It had the exact same texture, the exact same feeling that you have after you wake up from a horrific nightmare. And it's been a short time, but I hope you feel similarly. I feel a lot better today than I did last week. I feel a lot better. And my faith in humanity has been restored somewhat based on what we saw and what we did not see in the past 5 days. So I just have to open with that. It's important sometimes to look at the good also. It's such a horrific evil, but the story of our religion, and frankly, the story of our world, is a fallenness and evil that is redeemed by love. That's actually the beauty, and on some level, that is actually the ultimate meaning of our religion.
We need to bring that back. Nick is really spitting right now.
Is a fallenness and evil that is redeemed. Such a horrific evil, but the story of our religion, and frankly, the story of our world, is a fallenness and evil that is redeemed by love.
The story of our religion and the story of our world is a fallenness and evil that's redeemed by love. I talk about this all the time, about how my favorite aspect of God is his redemptive power, how he takes things that are meant for evil and he works them for good. So beautiful. It is the crux of the experience of living on earth and of being human, and the intersection of that with Christianity.
That's actually the beauty, and on some level, that is actually the ultimate meaning of our religion, which is a victory snatched from the jaws of defeat, which is a redemption from evil, from brokenness, which is even greater than the original position. It's the fruit being put back on the tree. It's the repairing of the world, the healing of the world through the sacrifice. And so I am actually touched by the outpouring of support, and I didn't expect that. And I think a lot of people didn't expect that. Certainly people that are not into politics, people that are more on the outside. So it's been very reassuring. But anyway, that's just a little note about maybe an epilogue about the show from Thursday. But tonight I do want to move on. I want to talk about some more topical things. Of course, Thursday I spent the entire show talking about the state of the country and giving a very general take on the entire tragedy. This is something that has rocked the country to its core. And it's difficult to say at this point what the ramifications will be, how far-reaching it will be, if there will be a chain reaction. And in particular, everybody is on full alert about political violence and the polarization, the tit-for-tat, the potential for reprisal. I don't think we're out of the woods on that just yet. But tonight, I want to talk in much more detail about the actual killing. I think it's appropriate at this point. I think it's worth talking about because, of course, we talked all about this on Thursday, and much has been said. So much has been said. So many takes and positions and plans, ideas. And what sticks out in my mind about all of it, for all this talk about civil war, for all this talk about national divorce and a conflict, a war of all against all in America, we still don't even know who fired the shot. Isn't that sort of interesting? One lethal shot rings out in Utah, taking the life of Charlie Kirk, and we think we know who fired it, but we're not sure. And like the American Revolution or like the Civil War, no one is really quite sure who fired the first shot. And people are racing, like I said, to their post to take these positions. Stephen Crowder is calling for violence, defensive violence. What's his clarification? There is a database of 60,000 liberals who celebrated the killing. Some people are blaming the Groypers. Other people are blaming Israel. It has been not a week, and we don't know who fired the shot, and yet everybody is all ready to blame someone else. Everybody already has a narrative constructed, how to interpret this event in the context of other events. And what this conflict in America is shaping up to actually be, we don't even know. And so I'd like to talk a lot about that tonight. We're going to talk about the different culprits. Tonight we're going to talk about the prime suspect in the killing, which is a 22-year-old by the name of Tyler Robinson. He is the person of interest in custody who the federal government will be charging any day now. State of Utah has already charged him. He has pled not guilty. He is not cooperating. He has not confessed to the authorities. There's a lot of evidence that places him at the scene of the crime. DNA evidence, video, photograph evidence. There are witnesses, but he has not given a confession, so it's not so cut and dry. We'll also talk tonight about the Israel angle. Many people online are speculating that Israel and its allies in the United States had something to do with the killing of Charlie Kirk, that it was a state-sponsored conspiracy involving Israeli intelligence and the American government and maybe other forces to silence Charlie Kirk, and a patsy was created. A left-wing person was elevated to take the blame for some purpose. We'll talk about that theory tonight as well. We'll also talk tonight about the left-wing conspiracy theory, which blames the Groypers. And this might be the most unbelievable one, and that's saying a lot. I've been accused of avoiding the Israeli angle And I'll just say at the outset, I've done one show since Charlie Kirk was murdered. I think I've put on Twitter maybe a dozen tweets. I have not avoided the subject. Honestly, I didn't think it needed to be addressed because it, frankly, on its face seems ridiculous. But somehow there's an even more ridiculous theory that has surfaced, which is that this anti-fascist, trans chaser furry who hated Donald Trump and thought Charlie Kirk was a Nazi was somehow a Groyper or far-right or a Trump supporter secretly. And we'll talk about that conspiracy theory too. We'll talk about each of them, and I'll evaluate them at the end of the show. And I'll give you a nuanced take. I hate that word typically because I prefer decisiveness and judgment, but it is important to be precise in our analysis and detailed and rigorous. I think people are owed that. I think that part of the problem with this assassination, like with every other tragedy or crisis in the past 10 years, is that nobody trusts the institutions. Nobody trusts the mainstream media. Nobody trusts the FBI. Nobody trusts the government. And to me, that is especially interesting because wasn't the whole conceit of the MAGA movement of the Trump election in 16, 20, and 24, this was supposed to be a remedy for that problem? What does it say about the Trump administration?
This is a key point. Restoring faith in the institutions was definitely a core campaign promise, and I think that has been an abject failure of this administration. I'm going to be real. I think it's largely attributable to the attacks on free speech associated with Israel and the Jeffrey Epstein seeming cover-up. I think those things have, if there wasn't this weaponization of government against the quote-unquote anti-Semitism in the form of free speech across the country, and if there was justice for Jeffrey Epstein victims, I think we'd have a completely different tune. But now, when you have people like Kash Patel who've seemingly proven incompetent, Pam Bondi over him, seemingly proven incompetent, even Dan Bongino, we love, or who at least we loved, having seemingly been proven incompetent, we're left with very little faith, combined with Governor Cox being rhino personified. So the Utah government, federal government, there's no faith in these institutions. So that really has a shaky foundation established for the investigation to begin with.
That we are in the second Trump administration after his third election, 10 years into his political career, and people do not have the slightest inclination to trust the government, even on a matter like this, when a close personal friend and political ally of the president himself and many members of his government and a key lieutenant in his movement is dead. Still, nobody trusts the FBI. So you have to leave it to the podcasters. You have to leave it to Candace Owens, Michael Savage, Alex Jones, Ian Carroll, Nick Fuentes, Dave Smith, to go through the evidence. And that's why I think, like I said on Thursday, people like me have a responsibility to tell you the truth. And not only to tell you my opinion, but to rigorously interrogate all the facts, all the angles, give you all the information, the preponderance of the evidence, and I will give you my sense, but I'll leave it to you to draw your own conclusions. So that's what we'll do tonight. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the show. And with that, we're going to dive in. First, I want to talk about the official story. Full disclosure, I think this is the most likely explanation. And I will lay out the evidence and I will tell you why. So first, the official story. Question, who killed Charlie Kirk? We do have a person of interest. We do have a suspect that is in custody. As you know, his name is Tyler Robinson. And in the past 5 days, we've learned a lot about him. We've learned all of his information. We've learned about his online habits. We've learned about his boyfriend, his residence, his family, his collegiate record, academic record, all of it. And this is a story from the Washington Post today. This is about as crystal clear as it gets. I'll read it to you. This is the latest development. As of today, we have the most damning evidence yet that Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old Mormon student who was studying in an apprenticeship to be an electrician, was the actual culprit behind Charlie Kirk's murder. We have evidence today.
Mormon. Okay, so let's be clear. He was not a Christian. Not coming from a Christian family.
From Discord and from a friend of his, he admitted it. According to the Discord platform itself, as well as one of the recipients of this message, Tyler Robinson said the day after Charlie Kirk was murdered to a number of people that he did it. He confessed. He sent in a message to a number of close friends on the Discord platform. He said, "Bad news, guys. It was me." He said he would surrender himself to the authorities, and he thanked his friends for all the laughs and all the memories. 2 hours later, at about 10 o'clock local time on Thursday, he was taken into custody by the FBI. This was reported today by the Washington Post, and this is the story. It says, quote, "The 22-year-old suspect in Charlie Kirk's killing appears to have confessed to friends in an online chat shortly before turning himself into law enforcement, according to 2 people familiar with the chat and screenshots obtained by the Washington Post. He wrote, 'Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this.' The message was sent Thursday night, about 2 hours before officials said Robinson was taken into custody. A member of the group chat shared an image of the conversation with the Post and confirmed that it came from Robinson's account. Discord provided a copy of the message with a confession to authorities, according to a person familiar with the company's interaction with law enforcement. The message was sent from Robinson's account to a small private group of online friends. Discord has said that an internal investigation found, quote, no evidence that the suspect planned the incident or promoted violence on Discord. Authorities have said one of Robinson's family members reached out to a friend, who then contacted law enforcement, saying that Robinson had confessed or implied that he committed the crime. Utah Governor Spencer Cox said over the weekend that Robinson's motive is still under investigation, but that the suspect appears to have held a leftist ideology. Officials say their interviews indicate that Robinson became more political in recent years and had criticized Kirk. The Discord conversation shared with the Post shows members of the group chat reacting to the shooting on Wednesday before the news broke that Robinson was involved. The group included about 30 people. The New York Times reported on a conversation in a different Discord chat group earlier the same day. In that conversation, Robinson joked that a doppelganger was trying to get him in trouble after law enforcement released images of a shooting suspect who resembled him. Cox confirmed the existence of that conversation on Sunday and said Robinson's friends did not believe it was actually him at that point. The person who provided other messages to the Post said they are from a different group. So this is the latest evidence. This is the most damning probably so far. We're getting them from two different sources. The Discord platform itself has turned over the messages to law enforcement, and this has been reported to the Post. So the actual platform, the Medium, shared those messages. They had them internally, where Robinson texted a group. I don't know if this was in a group chat or in a server, but he said, it was me. I'm turning myself over. And apparently one of the recipients of the message independently, they also shared the screenshot with the Post, and both the platform and the recipient verified that it came from Robinson's account. There's also other people, different people, that were in a different server. We don't know if the confession was in a group chat or a server. We do know that Robinson was in a different room, whether it's a server, a separate group chat, where he said that his doppelganger was trying to get him in trouble. He said he would not go to McDonald's. That's a reference to Luigi Mangione, who got caught at a McDonald's. So we're getting evidence from across the Discord platform that he was being a loudmouth. Now, this raises some questions. This is not as cut and dry as people say. And I said this on Twitter yesterday. There are some inconsistencies in this official story. And the biggest inconsistency about this confession, well, there's actually a couple. The first is that on Thursday, Discord reported to law enforcement and publicly that this incident was not planned or discussed on the platform. Now they come out a week later and they present internally the messages that Robinson sent. Now, either somebody is lying here and Discord was withholding these messages or did not find these messages, or maybe the messages were fabricated. But both cannot be true. Last week, Discord said there are no messages. Now they say there are messages. So what happened between Thursday and today that last week when the news of Tyler Robinson broke, when he was named as a person of interest, Discord washed their hands of it and made a public statement saying there was no involvement, and now today they're turning over the messages. Now, there's many explanations for this discrepancy. One explanation is that the messages were planted or fabricated. Another, maybe Discord did not find them. Maybe the most likely explanation is the nature of what Discord actually said, which is that the violence was not planned on the server. And maybe that's a weasel word. Although Tyler Robinson confessed shortly before being taken into custody, maybe there was no explicit reference to violence up until that point or at all. That might be one account for the discrepancy, but we don't know. That is an open-ended question for the FBI and the Department of Justice to answer. That is something that must be answered as the investigation is conducted, as this legal process is underway.
That's a fair, nuanced
Here's
take.
another problem. The story goes that Tyler Robinson returns home and apparently evades law enforcement completely. Now, that by itself is the subject of a lot of scrutiny. How was the prime suspect able to evade this manhunt carrying a long rifle? How was he able to evade law enforcement on a college campus, which is loaded up with not just cameras on the campus facilities, but also surrounded by a neighborhood that has doorbell cameras, and everybody has an iPhone these days? So there's a question of how did he evade in the first place? He returns home, apparently got away scot-free, somehow was able to get home undetected, 3.5 hours away from the scene of the crime. So he leaps from the rooftop, runs through the neighborhood. We don't know how he gets from the neighborhood to his house 3.5 hours away. Presumably he got to his car, maybe some accomplice, but he's able to get home undetected, escapes the radius of whatever manhunt was underway at that point, law enforcement checkpoints or surveillance, and immediately starts talking about it openly online. Does that sound right to you? If the first thing that happens, you successfully evade law enforcement, you got away, you're home free, you're gonna get away with it maybe. There's apparently no video, no photos. They have arrested several other suspects that are not you. You go and start mouthing off on Discord. Now, if he's a first-time murderer, you could say he might act in an irrational way, but certainly that is an irrational way to behave. There's an explanation for that. 22-year-olds that commit a murder in cold blood and then become the subject of the manhunt, maybe they self-report, maybe they get nervous. But people that carry out a sophisticated attack like that without being apprehended or detected and able to evade law enforcement, does someone like that get nervous in that way? It's another good question. Now here's the bigger question. Since he has been taken into custody, he has not confessed and will not cooperate with law enforcement. This is another story, I believe from the New York Post. It says, quote, Charlie Kirk's alleged killer is, quote, not cooperating with authorities and has not confessed to carrying out a shooting.
So he said
according to Utah's
that he was going to turn himself in, then why isn't he cooperating?
governor. The governor said among those cooperating with authorities was Robinson's roommate, who was also his boyfriend. He said the partner, Lance Twiggs, was transitioning from male to female. When asked by CNN, said that authorities do not yet know if that is relevant to the investigation. Cox added that the partner did not have any knowledge about the alleged shooting and has been incredibly cooperative and was working with investigators. So the killer comes home, mouths off to his Discord friends, confesses, turns himself in, and then shortly after turning himself in, does not confess to law enforcement and does not cooperate. So he apparently confessed to his friends in writing, confessed to his father, who turned him in with his cooperation, but now will not confess to law enforcement. So when did he change his mind and why? Why was he confessing in writing, which you have to know will be used against you? It's the internet. It's in writing. Confessed to his father, turned himself in voluntarily, although the initial story is that he was on suicide watch, contemplating suicide before he was turned in. Apparently now they say he voluntarily gave himself up. Now he won't admit it or cooperate. And let's now talk a little bit about the motive. They say that inside this community where he allegedly confessed to all of his friends, they were horrified. He said that, rather, the sources say in the Washington Post, that in this group chat or server where he confessed to the killing, they said that the other members of the group chat were expressing their horror at Charlie Kirk's death. There were quotes from other members that said he didn't deserve it. We're praying for his family. He might have had bad opinions, but he didn't have that coming to him. They say that the transgender boyfriend was also appalled at the violence. Now there's explanations for this too. Are they engaging in ass covering mode? Did they see what happened and feel the need to give themselves an alibi? Maybe they had instantaneous regret. Maybe the transgender boyfriend heard death penalty and then sought to cooperate. Or maybe was threatened with charges if he did not cooperate. Perhaps the suspect changed his tune when the death penalty came into the equation. These are possible explanations, but at this point, that's all they are, is contingent explanations. They are by no means definitive, and by no means can we assume these things. All we know is that there are a lot of discrepancies about the story. Now, there's some other things that we need to get into about the actual carrying out of the attack. Now, to me, this is the least controversial part. They say that Tyler Robinson got atop a building about 200 yards away from Charlie Kirk. Others say the distance was actually much shorter. And if you look at a 3D mock-up of the facility, it was not a difficult perch to gain access to. Unlike the rooftop in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, the killer here did not require a ladder to climb to the top of the roof. This was accessible by a pavilion, by a pedestrian walkway. There was a staircase that led up to the perch where the killing shot was fired. What's more, eyewitnesses say that there was no security at this event. There were security guards, and they were stationed in and around the tent where Charlie Kirk was present answering questions, but there was no security perimeter established. They did not control entry into the event or onto the campus. They did not check IDs. They did not scan tickets. And so this is the softest of soft targets. The nearest high point was not secured. This is a rooftop that anyone could have access to, did not require a ladder. The killer allegedly waltzed right up to the perch, set up the shot, took the shot, ran away. And if you view a three-dimensional mock-up of the facility, that looks perfectly possible. It looks easy. And it seems that if anybody knew where Charlie Kirk was going to be speaking, and if they scoped out the layout of the campus, it doesn't seem like this would be a difficult plot to put together and then to carry out. And it makes common sense. When you go to these events, people are paying attention to the event. People are paying attention to the spectacle. Apparently, there were spotters on the roof opposite where the killer was perched. Did they not see him? Maybe they did. Did the people on the ground not see him? These are some unanswered questions, but from what people say, it seems to be the case that this was a pretty easy setup. Without security, without checkpoints, he walked up, took the shot, walked right out. Now, the walking out has been the subject of a lot of controversy. People say that when Tyler Robinson or the gunman left the building, this is where it gets tricky. We don't know exactly how he gained access to the roof, if he climbed or if he took the staircase, but the surveillance video shows that he jumped off of the roof to make his escape, which was a high jump. And the video has been the subject of a lot of scrutiny. Some people say that the video does not show that he had his rifle with him. Why does this matter? Because, of course, the rifle was fully assembled when he took the shot. The rifle was fully assembled when it was recovered in a wooded area not far from where the shot was taken. Now, there's a video of him leaving the roof and making his escape through the wooded area where he discarded the rifle. Some people say that when he jumped off of the roof, they cannot see the rifle in his hands. Where would it be? It couldn't be on the roof because it was in the wooded area. If it wasn't visible in the video of him leaving the roof, that means it was either planted in the woods or he was concealing it somehow by deconstructing it in pieces. But if he deconstructed it in pieces, that would have been a time-consuming process that he probably couldn't have done in the allotted time. It would have been difficult to do. And even if he was somehow able to deconstruct the weapon on the roof, conceal it, jump off of the roof, the weapon was recovered after the fact in the woods, fully constructed. Which begs the question, did he then reconstruct the rifle in the woods to discard, to pick up later? Why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense at all. The story would have to go something like this. He concealed the rifle when he walked up, put it together, took it apart, jumped off the roof, put it back together, placed it in the woods, and then ran away. But this would be too time-consuming, would require maybe more equipment than he had, which was a screwdriver and nothing else, and wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. With that being said, if you look closely at the video of him jumping off of the roof, it is a grainy video. It's difficult to see. There's no question about that. It is ambiguous. But if you look closely, I do believe you can see that he is carrying a straight object that looks to be concealed by the towel. It swings from his right arm as he jumps off of the roof and lands with it. That's a matter of interpretation. That's a matter of perspective. I'm not going to say it's definitive. That's what I believe I saw. But this is some of the evidence that people like Michael Savage and others are using to say that maybe he was not the gunman or not the only gunman, or that maybe evidence was planted. That's been the subject of a lot of scrutiny. You can look closely at it. To me, I feel like I can see an object that does not bend, a straight, long object that swings as he jumps down, but again, it's a matter of interpretation. Now, the other piece of evidence, and this to me is maybe the most damning, this is the detail that I don't think a lot of people have talked about, but it is also somewhat unreliable. This speaks to the motive, and this is going to get us to some of the other culprits in the killing. Of course, the big question is, these are most of the relevant facts. The question is why, when a 22-year-old, who is by all accounts a brilliant, normal guy, why would he kill Charlie Kirk? It's a pretty radical action. A homicide of a high-profile stranger, a political figure in cold blood, from a Mormon Reddit guy who, according to his parents, had a 34 ACT score, which is very high percentile, 4.0 GPA, full-ride scholarship to a local college. Family was allegedly conservative, although some say that might not be the case. He had no criminal record, no history of murder or violence. So the question is why? Why does a 22-year-old carry out an attack like this? Why does a bright young man with no record, with his future ahead of him, and by the way, no social media footprint, which is a little interesting detail, why does this person decide to wake up one day and not just, by the way, carry out a random attack, but an orchestrated attack? And think about the difference here. There is all the difference in the world between a sloppy job, a sloppy passion of crime, where a nervous amateur, let's say for the sake of argument, walks up to the microphone, draws a pistol, and takes a shot. Because when I was told that Charlie Kirk was shot at a question and answer session, that is the first image that came to my mind. before I saw the video, before we became acquainted with the details, if someone told you, and you know what these events look like,
Yep.
if someone told you that someone took a shot at Charlie,
That's exactly what we thought. Was that in one of these videos that you see all the time that it came up with a microphone and then you shot him there, I was not thinking sniper in a purge.
Kirk, what would you imagine? I would imagine that when entering or exiting, or when sitting stationary in the chair, someone would draw a short-range weapon from a short distance and take a shot, like Luigi Mangione. But this required planning. This required sophistication. All these things that we just talked about, all these details were premeditated. It's not just that you have a brilliant 22-year-old, maybe not brilliant, but a gifted 22-year-old with a high ACT score, a high GPA, a full ride scholarship, a person with no footprint, no record of transgressive behavior, of violence, of antisocial behavior. As far as we know, no mental illness, no digital footprint of political extremism. Not just why does this person wake up one day and take a shot, which might be explainable by impulsiveness or passion or youth. Wake up, he's at my campus, reach for a gun, take a shot. He drove 3.5 hours from his home. He cased the location. He cased it. He scoped it out. He looked at a map. He scoped out where Charlie would be on the campus. He looked where he could take a shot. He thought about the choice of weapon, what would be reliable, what would have the requisite velocity, the scope. This was a marksman. He had experience with firearms. Now, maybe if you're a hunter, this sort of thing comes naturally, but I believe that hunting wildlife is different than killing a human being in a political assassination. So he premeditates this plot to drive 3.5 hours, set up on a perch, take the shot, drive home. Why does a 22-year-old do such a thing? And the explanation is that he hated conservatives. He hated Christians. He apparently had a transgender boyfriend, a male to female transsexual boyfriend that was living with him. And we've learned a little bit about the transsexual boyfriend, whose name is Lance Twiggs, kind of a ridiculous name. And they say that Lance Twiggs was a similar-aged young white man, also from a Mormon background, who was kicked out of his household by his parents when he came out as transgender and would not accept conversion therapy or reparative therapy or prayer from the Mormon church. And so circumstantially, people say, well, he's left-wing. He is dating a transsexual. Clearly, this was like Dog Day Afternoon. He was motivated by his love for his transsexual boyfriend and the rhetorical violence being inflicted on the transgender community by conservatives like Trump and Charlie Kirk to take a shot. And part of the story is this. An eyewitness, a neighbor from down the street, says that they were live-in roommates, they were partners, and what's more, that prior to the shooting, this is the most important detail as far as I'm concerned, there was a crowd at his house that showed up in cars with out-of-state license plates. And the neighbor said that these people gave him a bad vibe and insinuated they were transgender, maybe radical leftists. Out-of-state license plates. Now, what could this look like? Maybe this is a Discord tranny meetup. This is an extreme, let's act like detectives. This is an extremely online young man. His classmates described him as a Reddit kid. His Facebook photos show that he was a gamer. He had thousands of hours in video games, spent time in online communities on Discord, chatting with his friends while they played video games. Maybe he was gay. Maybe he was queer himself. He was dating a transsexual. Maybe he was passionate about LGBTQ causes. Maybe before Charlie Kirk showed up on campus, they invited the online community. And the thing is about online communities, they're not proximate. They're not local. You meet people online, they're from all over. Did his transgender furry community from Discord drive to his house to toast the imminent attack? An attack committed out of passion, out of love for the transgender boyfriend? Perhaps. But that seems a bit presumptuous. That is one explanation. Another is that out-of-state license plates, could these be bad actors? Rental cars, maybe other bad faith actors? Who are these people? Who are the people in his community? And you know what's interesting about all of these incidents? Every single time, there's always a small, tight-knit community. You ever notice that? The shooter in Minneapolis, the shooter in Wisconsin, the shooter in Buffalo. They always have a small, tight-knit online community of Satanists, of mass shooting enthusiasts, of racists, of trannies. And yet, we never hear of other arrests, do we? We never hear of a crackdown. We never hear about a network. And isn't that the sort of thing that you would need to see? Not just the least bit because you're bringing accomplices to justice, but also to create a deterrent against other people that might not say anything, that might not speak up when they witness a crime that might be forthcoming. So that's why I say we don't have all the information here yet. There are a lot of discrepancies. There are a lot of unanswered questions. Were there people with out-of-state license plates? Was that this neighbor's imagination or was that real? He said they gave him a bad vibe. Certainly, if out-of-state people that do not belong in St. George, Utah, if they're showing up to this killer's house in the week before the shooting, they should all be persons of interest. And it raises a lot of questions. And we can't assume that they're just tranny furries from Discord or something, although that is a plausible explanation. Now, there's some other problems with the theory. If our going theory is that he's some political extremist, what is really notable, it's not just what we see, it's what we don't see. What we see now are a collection of curated Discord messages. We see one Discord message that he sent confessing the crime and a handful of others from a server shortly after the crime was committed. We're supposed to believe this is a radicalized leftist, took the shot, etc. But you know the thing about young, radical, political people on the internet? You know they tend to broadcast their opinions. Have you ever met extremely political, extremely online young people? They have a tendency to not be able to keep it in their pants, take it from me, take it from anybody. Where's the TikTok? Where's the Instagram? Where's the Twitter? You're telling me there is no digital footprint? A person feels so strongly that allegedly they've been harboring this hatred, political extremism for a long time. It's been festering. It bubbles over into a deadly attack one day all of a sudden. But this happens completely in private. No one knows. The only evidence of a interior transformation on the part of the killer is testimony about a family dinner where allegedly Charlie Kirk's forthcoming college visit was discussed and liberal opinions were expressed at the dinner table. That's it. No tweets, no Instagram, no TikToks, no nothing. And you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me a lot of Thomas Crooks, the shooter at Butler. Remember that 18-year-old high schooler that shot Trump randomly in Butler? Another political extremist with no digital footprint. That's pretty, one, you might say it's possible. But two, the person that shot Trump in the head in the pursuit of political extremism had no digital footprint, no political digital footprint. The person that shot Charlie Kirk in the neck and killed him, also zero digital footprint other than a Steam collection. Seriously? It's a bit strange. Now, there is a plausible explanation for this. And other people have pointed this out, and I don't think this is inappropriate to say. When you look at this person's face, and when you hear the testimony from people that knew him, he strikes me as an autistic loser, basically. He had thousands of hours logged on video games. He's got a Facebook picture from when he was in grade school, receiving computer accessories for Christmas, playing on the computer. This was an extremely online Zoomer. And being an extremely online Zoomer, I can tell you, and you, if you're a Zoomer, you know what I'm talking about, there is a species of extremely online Zoomer that actually is discreet. There are gamers, there are autistic gamers out there that are not good looking, they're not sociable, and they're obsessed with politics, and they're obsessed with video games, and they do only have a Discord, let's say. They don't actually have an Instagram, they don't have a Facebook, they don't have a Twitter account. They do exist. There are these people, and it's a different species of extremely online Zoomer, but they might just have a Reddit, they might just have a Discord, they might because they're ugly, quite frankly, and not popular. Why would they be posting on Instagram? They're not good looking. They probably did not have a social circle in high school. What are they going to post? The pictures of parties they never went to, trips they never went on. For who? They're zero followers. That is, I happen to know, being on the right-wing side of things, there is a species of autistic, anti- or asocial Zoomers that do not maintain a lot of public-facing social media. It's possible. To me, it's very conspicuous. It's very strange, but it's not impossible. And what I am curious about is what social media footprint does exist. We need to know. If there is a footprint, we need to know what it is. What accounts did he have? Which accounts did he have that he might have deleted? Did he have public posts? What were they? He was clearly in Discord servers. According to Steven Crowder, who apparently has a pipeline to the intelligence community, the Mug Club, knows Al-Qaeda's next move for some reason. They know everything that the NSA knows. According to Steven Crowder, who's been vindicated on these things before, he was involved in communist groups in Utah, communist far-left servers on Discord. And that has also been seconded without much detail from law enforcement. So it is possible. Now, this is the portrait of the killer. The last piece of evidence to me, which is maybe the most damning about the killer, is this. We have all seen that there were multiple people who were local that seem to have had advanced knowledge of the attack. There were not just a few people who on X and on TikTok seem to have telegraphed the attack in advance. And there were multiple posts from different users that were connected in one way or another to the killer that said, if Charlie Kirk shows up, he will be liquidated. Something will happen big tomorrow. Don't show up to the campus. Now, if someone had advanced knowledge and they were broadcasting it that confidently and that openly, that's a sloppy job. That is a sloppy job, and that does look like there was a tranny furry meetup at Robinson's house. Maybe they had a big tranny orgy, and they toasted their ally who was going to take out the Nazi Charlie Kirk. What a ridiculous sentiment. Charlie Kirk was anything but a Nazi. And then they could not help themselves. They bragged about it. He took the shot. They felt remorse, put out their alibi. He drove home, got nervous, opened up his big fat mouth, went and turned himself in, and then heard they were talking about the death penalty, maybe talked to a public defender. Now he doesn't want to cooperate. Maybe he thinks he could get a deal. That is certainly one story. But here is the thing about the official narrative. We cannot take any of these things for granted. These are the questions that need to be answered. These are the discrepancies. What did Discord know? When did they know it? Why did they say that there were no messages? Is it because they were being weaselly and the attack was not coordinated on Discord, even though clearly the killer was talking about it on Discord? Is that what they meant? Or did something change in the past week? We need to know that. Who were these out-of-state license plates at his residence prior to the attack? What were these posts that seemed to have had advanced knowledge of the attack? Who were the people that he confessed to on Discord, and who was involved in the Discord communities with him? What were the names of the communities? We need to have all of the available footage, all of the security cameras, all of the ring cameras. We need to see the footage. How did he get from point A to point B? How did he get from his house to the campus and from his campus back to the house? We need to see that chain of custody. We need to see all of the evidence. Otherwise, we cannot take any of it for granted. With that being said, I do believe that is probably the most plausible explanation. I'm a rational person, and like I said, looking at the layout of the campus, unfortunately, when you realize that security is not always competent, these are things that sometimes do happen. There is a left wing in this country. It is extremely radical. There are young people in this country that are being radicalized on the internet. That's real. It happens all the time. The same day as the shooting against Charlie Kirk, there was a school shooting in Denver by a 16-year-old white male who was obsessed with Columbine. And that had nothing to do with Israel, and that had, to the extent that we know, that had no geopolitical ramifications. And that was on the heels of a transsexual that shot up a Catholic church in Minnesota last week, and a black fellow that shot up people in Tennessee in January, and a tranny that shot up a Catholic school in Wisconsin a few months before that. There is a problem here. There's clearly a problem, as everyone has admitted, of these communities on the internet, young people that are spending way too much time on them, carrying out acts of violence in the name of various ideologies, irony, nihilism, and maybe this was a part of that. Certainly these are things that happen. It's an explanation that's worth entertaining. But we do need to iron out all those inconsistencies and discrepancies. We need all the information. I want to move on to the theory that Israel was somehow involved. I'm going to be upfront with you. I find this to be unconvincing, and I will explain in rigorous detail why. When we implicate Israel, or I should say, when Israel implicates itself in various conspiracies, there's usually a reason why. I believe fully that Israel was involved, and the organized Jewish community was involved in many of the great conspiracies of the past 200 years. And I could tell you in one sentence why for each of them. I don't look at a crisis or a tragedy and assume that Israel did it. Contrary to what people like Ben Shapiro say, that I trip on my shoelaces and blame the Jews, I don't rush to judgment and think that Israel is behind every crisis or every disaster or anything. I do believe that Israel was involved in JFK's assassination. Why? Because Lee Harvey Oswald had CIA handlers. James Angleton was running that team of handlers. Many of them were Jewish. And James Angleton is mourned in Israel. He managed the Israeli desk at the CIA. He traded U.S. nuclear secrets to Israel for intelligence on the Soviet Union. Jack Ruby, a Jewish mobster connected to Meyer Lansky that ran guns to Israel, killed Lee Harvey Oswald. Why do I think Israel was involved? That's why. How about the USS Liberty? Well, Israeli fighter jets blew up the ship to cover up their activities in the Six-Day War in 1967. Enough said. And 9/11, why do we believe Israel was involved? Because they were arrested on 9/11. Because a 911 call was placed, and according to FOIA requests, at least 4, but up to 6 Israeli intelligence operatives were arrested, filming the towers collapsing in free fall, apparently with prior knowledge of the attack. And later in the day, Urban Moving Systems was apprehended by police with explosives in their van, and they were released without any incident. When we look at just a survey of the biggest conspiracies of the past 7 years, these are just 3. There's always a connection. We don't start with Israel did it, now here's how we can make it work. We start with the evidence. And we survey the evidence, and if we can find a motive, and if we can find a connection, then we can plausibly create a conjecture or postulate that Israel might be involved. What was Israel's motive in JFK? He was going to deprive them of their nuclear capability. What's the connection? James Angleton, Jack Ruby, enough said. USS Liberty, what was their motive? Conceal their maneuvering in the Six-Day War. What was the connection? Well, they blew up the ship. Enough said. They blew up the ship. Enough said. 9/11, what was the motive? Get America into Iraq, and then Syria, and then Iran, and everywhere. What was the connection? They were dancing. You had thousands of art students apprehended in federal government buildings. Went to war the next day. The war plans were on Bush's desk the day before. Enough said. But this is why I'm skeptical about Charlie Kirk. I said on Thursday that I didn't like Charlie Kirk. He was my opponent. A lot of people that have never seen my show before said, why was Charlie Kirk your opponent? Well, 6 years ago, I had my first interaction with Charlie Kirk in 2019. In the summer of 2019, I was banned from speaking at any Turning Point USA chapter or any Turning Point USA event. I didn't know why. I attended a party with Ashley St. Clair in September of 2019. I took a photo with her. She was a Turning Point ambassador at that time. When Turning Point caught wind that she was in a photograph with me, they terminated her from the ambassador program. I attended the Politicon event in, I believe, October 2019. I was physically removed from the event by a dozen police officers at the behest of Charlie Kirk. I had no idea why. In 2019, my followers began to attend Charlie Kirk's Q&A sessions at his college tour. We were much younger back then. He was younger, I was younger. It was 6 years ago, almost to the day. And my followers would approach Charlie Kirk and ask questions like, Google dancing Israelis. Why did Israel blow up the USS Liberty? They would say, should it be America first or Israel first? And they would press Charlie Kirk, among other things, on why he supported Israel. Now, in 2019, there was a very different Charlie Kirk than there is in 2025. In 2019, Charlie Kirk visited Israel and said he loved the food, the people, he wore the hat, he kissed the wall. In 2019, he went to donor events and said that, you know, the people, the land in America, they really mean nothing. America's about the Constitution. And if you gave a desert island with a desert island population the Constitution, that would be America. He said, but Israel's different. Their land, their people is holy and sacred, and their nationalism must be respected. This is what mainstream conservatism was in 2019. And there were very few people pushing back against it. I was one of them. Michelle Malkin was another. The Groypers led the charge in the Groyper War. And the Groyper War, unlike these far-left people or others, was a war of ideas. Our greatest aspiration, maybe my greatest professional aspiration for the past 6 years, was to debate Charlie Kirk, to confront him in a debate on this issue in particular. That was my grievance with Charlie Kirk. And for years, my perception of him, and this was also the reality, is that although I believe his heart was in the right place, and I think that he was the defender of the truth on some other issues, or came to be a defender of the truth on other issues, I do believe that he was complicit in the Israeli capture of the right wing for a very long time. And that is unfortunately just the truth. And as much as we can grieve and as much as we can mourn and we can say that obviously he did not deserve what happened to him, we cannot fall into the trap of creating a mythology that does not reflect reality. It is true that for year after year, Turning Point USA grew and grew with sponsorship from Israeli, pro-Israel, Jewish, Zionist donors. And they did this because Turning Point USA was an extremely pro-Israel organization. And anybody that has ever been in Turning Point USA will tell you that same thing. They give you a box of stickers and buttons and posters, and many of them say things like, socialism sucks, and enjoy capitalism. And many of them say, support Israel. Many of them say, I heart Israel. And as we all know, Turning Point USA was part of the conservative activist enterprise, which was funded to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars by Jewish donors to indoctrinate young American conservatives with a pro-Israel ideology, alongside Prager University, alongside Daily Wire, alongside many other similar projects. That's the pretext under which it was founded with Foster Fries's money, and that's how it was right up until last week and to today. So this is why I say, I find it very unconvincing and very unlikely that Israel killed Charlie Kirk, and the reason why I find it almost ridiculous is, as I said, because for the past 6 years, that has actually been the cleavage issue. That has been the subject that I have fought Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA on for the better part of my career, for nearly a decade. That is why I was not permitted into his events. That is why he refused to debate me.
We're going to be right back. Use the restroom. Oh, we back. Oh, we back. Oh, we back. Oh, we back. We back in this thing. Appreciate your patience.
That is why he characterized me as a bad faith troll, among other things. That was the reason for our initial conflict. And I don't want to relitigate all of it, but this has become the subject of careful scrutiny. There is a question now. Who killed this man? Was it his enemies on the left? Was it his enemies on the right? Was it his enemies closest to him? Perhaps the Zionist donors? I don't say any of this for any reason. Obviously, dead men tell no tales. I do not say this to speak ill of the dead. I do not say this to get my 2 cents in. I say this for the record. This is the record of history. That was our ideological and professional conflict. That was our feud. And the tragedy on Wednesday, it doesn't change that history. That was the basis for it. So to me, it is very unlikely that the Israelis had it out for him because, well, why would they? Charlie Kirk was a steadfast ally of Israel for his entire career. Charlie Kirk was pro-Israel explicitly, publicly, steadfastly for years, right up until his death. That is the sober and realistic fact. So the question is, why does everybody believe that Israel was implicated last week? Well, there is a narrative that has been promulgated that Charlie Kirk was on the verge of a great conversion. The narrative is, in light of the record of history and where Charlie Kirk was in his journey, the argument goes that this year, recently, in response to recent developments like the turning of Candace Owens, the turning of Tucker Carlson, the genocide in Gaza, and the beating of the war drums in Iran, that Charlie Kirk was undergoing a change of heart, and that there was an interior and a private struggle, that Charlie Kirk was changing his mind, and as a result, he was chafing with his Jewish donors. There was a tension. He was created by Jewish donors. He was funded by Jewish donors. Jewish donors were his patrons. And so the story goes, like many of us, we're all in a different place in our journey, and some have awakened later than others. Charlie Kirk, like anybody, was discovering the truth. And he was having a faith awakening, maybe converting to Catholicism, recognizing the tension between religious Judaism and Christianity, or the brutality in Gaza with the tenets of the gospel. And also an ideological conversion, realizing that a Israeli capture of American foreign policy is in complete contravention of an America First foreign policy, which he advocates for. And so the story goes, Charlie Kirk was changing his mind on these issues. He was expressing it privately. He was telegraphing or signaling that the ship would be righted and that he was beginning to resist the most zealous, fanatical, demanding Israel First donors. And the prospect of someone so powerful like Charlie Kirk, particularly among the young right-wing conservatives of America, it was too much of a risk for Israel to tolerate. So they took him out. Before he could leave the pro-Israel plantation and take all the young conservatives with him, the story goes that they eliminated him and perhaps set up somebody like Ben Shapiro to take his place. So that when the false flag occurs, and it will, you hope it doesn't, but it looks likely, when the call for a war in Iran becomes deafening, they will have someone reliable, someone predictable, someone that they have certainty. Why take a chance? Someone that they are certain will toe the line and push America and its youth to support a war. That's the story. Now, what is the evidence for this narrative? Well, there are some public examples. There is a video from October 2023, 2 years ago, where Charlie Kirk takes out his frustration at secular Jewish donors that support left-wing causes, like mass immigration and social liberal causes. And then they expect that young white conservatives will turn around and support the Zionist cause. This is a clip from 2 years ago. There are other clips, like a recent interview with Megyn Kelly in August, where Charlie Kirk is clearly frustrated, visibly frustrated and perturbed, and how he has been a defender of Israel, considers himself still a defender of Israel, and yet there is a powerful chorus of stakeholders, leaders in the pro-Israel movement who are not just disagreeing with him, but viciously attacking him and impugning his motivation, calling him an anti-Semite. In other words, Charlie Kirk is saying, is it not good enough that I'm an ally, I'm listening, I've supported you for years? Not only is it not good enough, but now you attack me? You say I'm evil? How dare you? I'm an American. What do you expect this relationship is supposed to be? And so Charlie Kirk seems to be in a moment of candor, venting his very real frustrations. And you can only imagine, Charlie Kirk is a young, extremely powerful, ambitious guy, and for better or for worse, he is an American. Born and raised in Arlington Heights in the suburbs of Chicago, is a Protestant Christian. And while he might have cut deals or made compromises or went with the program before, now that this Israeli agenda is truly coming into conflict with what it means to be an American and a Christian, now he starts to buck the expectations of his foreign patrons or handlers. There's a bit of moxie. There's a little bit of, he seems to be emboldened. If you're a young, powerful guy, you don't want to take orders from people. If you're Charlie Kirk and you're 31, and you got the world on a string, you're the bagman for the GOP, you run with the president, you travel the world, you run the conservative movement, there's a little bit of swagger, there's a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. Does a young man like that want to take orders and be lectured and berated and attacked? Meanwhile, he's getting it from the other side. He's getting every groiper and every 18-year-old asking him about dancing Israelis 100 times a day. I'm sure at that point he's extremely frustrated. And that shined through in his Megyn Kelly interview in early August of this year, just a month ago. People take that as evidence. Just a couple of days before he was gunned down, he interviewed Ben Shapiro, actually just the day before. He interviewed Ben Shapiro about the situation in Gaza and asked some interesting leading questions. He asked Shapiro if we can trust what the media says about Israel. He asked if what Israel is doing can be considered an ethnic cleansing. He asked if Israel created a PR problem for themselves in America, and why can't they end the war more quickly? And so people say that there was clearly this public inquiry. If he wasn't taking an explicitly anti-Israel stance, he was signaling. He was becoming candid. He was becoming emboldened. He was venting.
he hasn't talked about Harrison Smith, the source close to Charlie, saying that he was afraid that Israel would kill him. I mean, this is a huge piece to this theory a month ago. And then that since has been corroborated by a separate source.
That he did not like what the Israelis were pushing, and he did not feel like the Israelis had the authority to push him. So there was this quiet rebellion that was happening maybe inside of his interior life. Maybe he was having private conversations with his friends like Steve Bannon and Candace Owens and Dave Smith and others who have intimated that there were similar conversations like this, and that this was starting to express itself outwardly in these media appearances. What's more, famously, at his SAS Student Leadership Conference in the summer this year, he hosted a debate on Israel between one of the Israeli Zionist propagandists, Josh Hammer from Newsweek, and Dave Smith, who was calling Israel warmongering genocidal maniacs at a Turning Point conference. He hosted Tucker Carlson, and at this conference, they both admitted that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. That's the public evidence. There's also private evidence of a revelation. Privately, there is a piece by Max Blumenthal at the Gray Zone. This is the only source for it. Max Blumenthal, a Jewish leftist at the Gray Zone, has reported that private sources, anonymous sources, allegedly friends of Charlie Kirk, have come forward since his death, and they say that Charlie Kirk was becoming afraid. He did disagree with the Israel lobby on the Iran policy, on the Gaza policy.
This is the corroborating
He wanted to go against the program, but he was afraid. The Israelis were not happy with him. They were offering him money. He turned it down. They invited him to Israel. He turned that down too. They talk about a meeting in August where Bill Ackman, a billionaire Jewish donor who is connected to Israel and Jeffrey Epstein, they say that Bill Ackman effectively gave him a ultimatum. This is how this is being characterized. I'm not claiming this, but Candace Owens and Max Blumenthal have characterized this meeting based on conversations they had with him and other attendees of the meeting. Then in early August, Charlie Kirk met with Bill Ackman, a Jewish billionaire, and others like Seth Dillon of Babylon Bee, Josh Hammer, and they staged what they characterized as an intervention where they berated Charlie Kirk for his resistance to the pro-Israel agenda, and they say that Charlie Kirk felt as though he might be blackmailed in the future, that they were going to play dirty. And so there is this narrative that Charlie Kirk, although we know him as in the pocket for Israel, he was clearly a willing and complicit client of the Israel lobby for his entire career. They say that, like all of us, based on recent developments, which are a true inflection point in American-Israel's relationship, that he, like everybody, was starting to get sick of the Israeli capture and Israeli influence over our government. Did not agree that we should go to war with Iran, did not agree that children should be genocided in Gaza, and was getting sick of defending it. He was signaling that in public, he was openly discussing it in private, and it seems that the Israelis were becoming increasingly frustrated and intimidating and menacing and threatening, and what started out as offers to buy him turned into potentially intimidation and threats, and they say evolved ultimately into a bullet. They eliminated him because they realized they couldn't control him. That is the narrative. And this is a story from the Gray Zone. I will read the important parts of it to you. This is what they characterize as the moment when Charlie Kirk was intimidated. It says, quote, the Gray Zone has spoken to 5 people with intimate...
Let's find this. Going to change this part.
Threatening, and what started out as offers to buy him turned into potentially intimidation and threats, and they say evolved ultimately into a bullet. They eliminated him because they realized they couldn't control him. That is the narrative. And this is a story from the Gray Zone. I will read the important parts of it to you. This is what they characterize as the moment when Charlie Kirk was intimidated. It says, quote, the Gray Zone has spoken to 5 people with intimate knowledge of Charlie Kirk's meeting with Bill Ackman, which was held in early August. According to one source, Kirk was left upset after the gathering turned into an intervention where he was hammered for his increasingly skeptical views on the U.S. relationship with Israel and for platforming prominent conservative critics of Israel at his Turning Point events. Since publishing the report, the Gray Zone has learned from one attendee of the Hamptons event that Ackman convened the influencers under the auspices of a discussion about Zohran Mamdani and the supposed threat that he posed to the West if elected mayor of New York. But the meeting went off the rails when Ackman personally confronted Kirk about his views on Israel. An unknown British woman joined in the argument and began screaming at Kirk, according to the attendee. When his host presented him with a detailed list of every offense he supposedly committed against Israel,
then, if you can, stay
Kirk
free.
was horrified, said one attendee. Ackman also allegedly demanded that Kirk rescind his invitation for Tucker Carlson to speak at the upcoming America Fest 2025 in December. The Gray Zone reported on September 12th, citing a longtime associate of Kirk, that Netanyahu had offered to organize a massive infusion of pro-Israel money into Turning Point, and that Kirk refused. Another longtime friend of Kirk has told the Gray Zone that the conservative activist also rejected an offer Netanyahu delivered 2 weeks before his death to meet with him in Jerusalem. Kirk, according to one person with inside knowledge of the meeting with Ackman, said he left feeling as though he'd been subjected to blackmail. In a series of text messages, Ackman described his account of the meeting with Kirk as totally false. He pledged to release a public statement providing his own account of the event, but refused to clarify any further details. He said, "I can easily put this to bed. I have receipts," but he did not abide when asked to provide the receipts to the reporters. So this is some of the substantiating evidence. They say, and these are really the two big things, they're two separate things. They say that Charlie Kirk was offered an infusion of $150 million by Israel. Okay? That would double Israel's budget, or excuse me, Turning Point USA's budget. Turning Point USA has an annual budget of $140 million. Netanyahu offered Turning Point $150 million. For one purpose and one purpose only, to shill for Israel harder. Turning Point USA is already pro-Israel. They're not anti-Israel. They've never been anti-Israel. Charlie Kirk has, in the past, criticized Bibi Netanyahu. He has criticized secular left-wing Jewry in America. He has criticized a war with Iran, the famine in Gaza. He has never opposed Israel in itself. He has never explicitly opposed Israel. Israel offered him $150 million to be more pro-Israel than they already were, to be harder in their support for Israel, and in particular, to support regime change in Iran and to support their ethnic cleansing and genocide in Gaza. And Charlie Kirk refused the money. And I have independently confirmed that, by the way. I've heard that from 4 people. 4 people that I trust that are in the know. So this is coming from Candace Owens, a friend of Charlie Kirk. This is coming from Max Blumenthal, who purports to have a source. And I have heard from a handful of people independently of those sources that this offer was real and that Kirk turned down the money. After Charlie Kirk turned down the money, Netanyahu asked if he would come visit Jerusalem and give him the re-education tour. The Holocaust Museum, the burned babies, the beheaded babies, the one that Elon Musk took, the one that our Speaker of the House took, anyone that's ever criticized Israel has been subjected to. He refused that as well. They offered to bribe him. They tried to re-educate him. He refused both offers. That's 1. 2, they say Bill Ackman, the Jewish pro-Israel billionaire, hosted this event at his house in the Hamptons where they staged an intervention. And he, along with other pro-Israel mouthpieces, pro-Israel traitors and shills, berated and screamed at him for not supporting Israel enough. And whatever they say about it, whatever other people say about it, Charlie Kirk's friends intimate that he felt scared. He felt as though he was being intimidated and blackmailed potentially. Well, he's dead now, so he can't tell us what really went down. All we know is what the people who berated him allegedly felt about it, but we don't know his perspective. Now, since this report has been published, Bill Ackman has responded on Twitter, and I'll read his response in full because we have to rigorously analyze all the facts. This is what he says. He said, quote, "I connected with Charlie when he DM'd me in late May of this year and expressed interest in meeting me. We were unable to find a time to meet, so we scheduled a Zoom on June 11th. So Charlie texted Bill Ackman first. They got on a Zoom in June. Charlie explained to me that young conservatives were getting tired of defending Israel, and this was very concerning. He suggested it might be useful to convene a group of young conservative influencers on a host of topics that could include Israel to get a better sense of how the community was thinking about Israel and other relevant issues. He suggested that recruiting a group of junior Charlie Kirks who could host open mic sessions on college campuses could be an effective way to encourage debate. We thereafter scheduled a series of conference calls and Zooms with Charlie, Turning Point, and members of my team in an effort to assemble a diverse group of influencers so that we could convene for a day-and-a-half session. We chose the afternoon of August 4th. And Charlie and members of my team worked to put together an invitation list. I offered to host the sessions in Bridgehampton and cover the costs so that I could attend some of the sessions. Charlie sent out the invitations and about 35 or so influencers accepted. Charlie estimated that the influencers who attended collectively had more than 100 million followers. Charlie and Turning Point put together the agenda for the meeting. Charlie asked me to moderate the economic future discussion, which I did, and I thereafter hosted a Q&A session with the participants. The discussion of the convergence of East and West included a discussion of immigration, value systems, the U.S. approach to foreign policy, and Israel. While I wanted to attend that panel, I had a board meeting that conflicted with that session. Those who attended that session said that the Israel discussion was similar to the others, with attendees expressing varying points of view as well as explaining the views of their followers. Some were critical of Israel, and others were supportive. The sessions were punctuated by meals. I attended one group lunch and a dinner where I sat with Charlie and others. At the end of the event, I sat with Charlie and members of my team, and we discussed the events of the convening. Charlie believed he had identified a number of potential Turning Point ambassadors who could launch open mic events on campus, and that he would follow up with them. We agreed to keep in touch thereafter. We corresponded by text over the next few weeks on a range of topics, not including Israel, and next thing I knew, he was gone. In short, this was not an intervention to blackmail Charlie Kirk. There was nothing of that sort. Candace replied and said, Candace Owens, she said, I was clear Charlie felt blackmailed by the offer to fund Turning Point, which he refused, not that you, Bill Ackman, blackmailed Charlie Kirk. She said people in attendance described it as an intervention. Josh Hammer and Seth Dillon were disappointed that Charlie was frustrated with Bibi Netanyahu and what would happen if he publicly criticized him. Nothing else in your response disputes that Charlie was pressed by you and others about his viewpoints on Israel and about Tucker or Bibi's phone call. As a follow-up, do you know anything about the alleged $150 million Bibi offered for an anti-Tucker campaign? Now, Candace's response, if you've been following this, let's just piece it together quickly. So Blumenthal and Candace are claiming that Bill Ackman corners Charlie Kirk in an intervention at his house in August for a struggle session. And people are screaming at Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk there's this climate of fear.
Why can't we find Candace's reply to this? Here we go.
I said,
and what is intimated is that there is some menacing here. The message is you better get in line. It's hostile. It's over the top. There's an intervention. They're telling him you better ship up or shape out. You better support Israel or else. That is how this is characterized by Blumenthal and by Candace Owens. What Bill Ackman puts forth is that actually Charlie initiated contact with him. Charlie and he set up the event. Charlie and he arranged the venue and invited the influencers. Charlie had very little FaceTime with Ackman. And Ackman says that the Israel session was similar to all the others. Now, these are two completely different accounts. One, by Blumenthal and Candace, is filled with insinuations and is not telling the whole story. It's almost like a dream-like characterization. You never know how you get in the middle of a dream. You just wake up and you're there. So they say Charlie happens to be at this event. Apparently, it's an ambush. It was supposed to be one thing. It turns into an intervention. People are screaming. He's afraid. They're telling him, get in line or else. Well, Bill Ackman answered the charge. And he said, on the contrary, this was not a random event that Charlie happened to come to where we staged an ambush. Charlie reached out to Ackman. Charlie and Ackman set up the event. It was a Turning Point event. It was funded by Ackman, but Charlie made the guest list. The point was to groom influencers to be Turning Point representatives. Ackman didn't attend most of it. Apparently, it was cordial. Some were pro-Israel, some were critical of Israel, and discussions of Israel was on the docket. It's not like they caught him off guard. That was part of the routine. When Candace replies to the correction, she effectively concedes all of that and says, well, some woman was screaming. She says that people were disappointed. She said, for example, that Seth Dillon and Josh Hammer were especially disappointed at Kirk's views. Well, wouldn't they be? They're extreme Zionists, but expressing disappointment is different than menacing. It was characterized in the Gray Zone piece and in Candace's show like they were bringing down, they were pointing a gun at him. Like, they didn't say that, but the characterization is that this was an intervention. There was a culture of fear. There was an implicit threat. That's how they insinuated this went down. It was an ambush.
Did she concede? I don't really see the concession. I know that Nick and Candace have some going on.
In reality, it was not an ambush. If anything, Charlie knew what he was getting himself into. They said they were screaming and berating. Now Candace concedes, well, these Zionists who were invited by Charlie were disappointed. Well, I mean, wouldn't they be? She says, well, I never said you blackmailed him. I said he felt blackmailed about something else. Okay, well, it seemed like you insinuated that, but that's subjective. She says, and anyway, this is really about the phone call with Netanyahu and Kirk. Okay, so if you're only, think of this, you have two separate accounts. Candace and Max Blumenthal are characterizing this one way. Bill Ackman is laying out the facts with dates, and he says Charlie sent the first text. This is when he texted me. This is when we called. This is who set it up. This is where it took place. This is how many people came. This is who came. These were the discussion sections. This is how long we talked, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She didn't dispute any of that. She didn't dispute any of those details. So she's effectively conceding that, yes, Bill Ackman gave an accurate account. And that just sounds like a regular run-of-the-mill fundraiser. That sounds like a regular run-of-the-mill political get-together where tactical and ideological disagreements are discussed, but it's overall cordial, and it's not some big catastrophe or something. She didn't dispute any of those details other than to say, well, but wouldn't you say that Josh Hammer was disappointed? Okay, but Josh Hammer is like on the payroll of the Israelis. You might as well say that Netanyahu is disappointed that Charlie Kirk criticized Netanyahu. It comes with the territory. That's different than people screaming, people berating, and intervention. That's the only detail that she had any qualms with, and then very quickly pivots to what about the phone call? Now, so I have a big problem with that because that's dishonest. Blumenthal and Candace, unless they produce receipts, unless they produce evidence to the contrary, it seems like they mischaracterized that meeting entirely. It seems like they lied about that. That they were, at the minimum, disingenuous. Because, again, two very different portrayals. One had actual information. The other seemed to rely on insinuation and implication. And when the facts came out, none of the facts were disputed. So unless Blumenthal or Candace can produce receipts to the contrary, it seems like they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And I watched Candace's show in full. I read the piece in the Gray Zone. And Bill Ackman's account of that event, it just devastates the implications they made about it. And unless they can refute the facts that he provided, it seems like they intentionally were disingenuous in characterizing the event. And then when they got caught, Candace pivoted to the other thing. Like I said, there's two things. There's Netanyahu offering $150 million to buy them out, and then there's this seemingly innocuous meeting. Now, why didn't you lead with the phone call? If the big evidence is that Netanyahu made this offer,
following my September 12th report, which provided background about the pressure, the mounting pressure that Charlie Kirk was under from pro-Israel forces, from Netanyahu's cutouts in the United States, I gathered more details. The piece, it hit like a sledgehammer. It really caused a lot of, I think it spoke for a lot of people, particularly within the conservative movement, which is changing among the youth on the question of Israel. And more people started coming out, and more people started talking, and people were talking to me. And these were people who had knowledge of a tumultuous, stormy meeting held in the Hamptons during the first week of August, convened, according to multiple sources, with knowledge of this meeting, intimate knowledge of this meeting, by the billionaire ultra-Zionist financier Bill Ackman, who's close to Netanyahu and his kind of network in the United States. Charlie Kirk was summoned along with an array of young, sort of vapid, very avaricious conservative influencers who seem to be sort of in Israel's back pocket to set a very pro-Israel tone for this meeting. And Charlie Kirk was, according to one source, hammered by Ackman and others for allowing Israel critics, very prominent conservative voices like Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, or the anti-Zionist Jewish comedian Dave Smith to appear at his events. And actually, Charlie Kirk was planning to host many of these same figures again in December, and he had just added to his TPUSA major, I think it's called America Fest in December, the premier critic of Israel in Congress. I didn't say Republican critic, I just said premier critic, because that's what she is now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, which really reflected his shifting views. And Ackman, according to multiple sources, had this meeting to basically bully Charlie Kirk into submission. Charlie Kirk walked away, according to one person, feeling like there was an attempt to blackmail him. He refused any offers of funding and also refused the offer to travel to Israel and meet with Netanyahu, which Netanyahu disclosed in the wake, the immediate wake of Netanyahu's death. He talked about this letter, but he didn't say whether Charlie Kirk refused or accepted. I've learned since that he refused.
Okay. Back to me.
And the meeting was really secondary or ancillary or not what it's cracked up to be. Why'd you even bring that up? That hurts your credibility. That hurts the credibility of the case because very clearly they're not telling the whole story there, and Bill Ackman is. Or he's telling parts of it that they did not. But let's talk about the $150 million because to me, this is a big problem. Let's briefly talk about the predicament that Israel is in. Israel, as stated by the ADL and by their own representatives, has a generational problem. They don't have an ideological problem, they have a generational problem. It's not that the left hates them, it's not that the right hates them, it's that the young people are becoming indifferent to the cause of Israel. The left is overwhelmingly, at this point, pro-Palestine, more so than they are pro-Israel. The younger generation in particular is radical. They believe that Israel is a settler colonial state. They're carrying out an ethnic cleansing. They're genocidal. The left wing is radicalized. They are enthusiastic. They are angry. Needless to say, Israel has lost the left, and they've especially lost the youth on the left. But on the right, increasingly, it's not much better. They still have the boomers, and they still have the millennials to some degree. But the Zoomers are becoming completely apathetic about Israel. They do not care. They're becoming indifferent. And many of them are becoming anti-Israel. Now, that is something that poses an existential threat to Israel. Because this Generation Z on the right and the left, they will grow up, they will go to the selective schools, they will graduate those schools, they will enter the pipeline in the State Department, in the top positions, in the elite fields in our country, in finance, in law, in media, and they will not be sympathetic to Israel. And when that happens, Israel will lose its most important patron. So that spells a big problem for them. Because what you need to understand about Israel and our special relationship, if you understand nothing else, is this. Much has been said about our special relationship, our closest ally, and how conspicuous this is, and how unique it is, for better or for worse. But what you need to understand, if nothing else, is that America is indispensable to Israel. America is inseparable with Israel. In many ways, America and Israel are literally inextricable. They cannot be separated one from the other. And this is by design. It has been this way from the beginning. Israel could not have been settled, founded, defended, maintained, would not have survived without unconditional, constant, overwhelming support from America for over 100 years. Now, people say Israel was declared in 1948. It goes back further than that. It goes back further than that. Without the American Jewish community supporting the Zionist project, even in the first half of the 20th century, there would be no Israeli state. It has been like this from the beginning. America is indispensable to Israel. And why? Because when Israel was fighting its Arab neighbors, America was legally and illegally providing the conventional weapons, the nuclear weapons. When Israel was faced with foes like Saddam Hussein and Bashar al-Assad and Muammar Gaddafi, the United States was fighting the wars Israel could not win. When the international community began to turn against Israel and its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, the United States vetoed the Security Council resolutions condemning it. The United States is indispensable for Israel's survival. And have you ever noticed that that is the lingo that they use? Israel has a right to exist. Israel has a right to defend itself. That is the dogma. It has a right to exist. It has a right to defend itself. Well, if America is indispensable to Israel's existence and Israel's self-defense, then that means that Israel is entitled to American support. Do you understand how that works? If Israel has a right to exist, but its existence is contingent on American support, then that means that Israel has a right to American support. If Israel's self-defense is absolutely contingent on American support, then it has a right to American support. And what kind of system do we have in America? An open society, a democracy, a liberal society, some might say an oligarchy, a capitalist society. For Israel to secure this existential support, this indispensable support from America, they must secure influence over America's system, over its democracy, over its government, over its society. And how does it do that? It must regulate broadcasting and dissemination of information. Because as long as people vote, and as long as candidates are staged for the political parties, then American citizens still have some sovereignty and some say in what the government does. So it's not enough that the Israelis penetrate our government and Wall Street and other things. They must penetrate the media and regulate the medium, that's where media comes from, the medium of the dissemination of information. They must control the broadcasting of information. How do you control these elections, our open society, our democratic government? By controlling the minds of the masses through the public square, through the centralized mass media, which was television, radio, and print, and is now social media. And if Israel has a right to exist, and its existence is contingent on support from America, then they see it as their right to control and influence and manipulate our system. Understand that logical progression? And think about these questions of survival. Do you take your survival seriously? Do you take the survival of your wife and kids seriously? Would you do anything to protect your wife and kids from destruction? Would you lie, cheat, steal? Would you kill to defend and protect yourself, your wife, and your children? Of course you would. Now, what is the mindset of the Zionists? What is the mindset of Jews? I know that sounds a certain way, but this is a fairly obvious question. I'll tell you what the mindset is. They have been persecuted for 2,000 years. The Romans put them down in a series of rebellions and killed thousands of them according to their narrative, expelled them from their land. And for 2,000 years, they were forced to dwell in exile, being chased from one kingdom to another, facing inquisitions, segregation, facing cruelty, discrimination, prejudice, hatred, pogroms, massacres,
and they crucified their Messiah.
So they founded Israel, a place where they can finally be safe, where they would never live in fear of extermination, being at the mercy of a hostile totalitarian regime, where they could exist, where they could thrive. Now, stay with me here, it follows. If you as an individual would lie, cheat, steal, maybe kill to protect yourself and the ones you love, put yourself in the mindset of the leaders and the stakeholders of the Jewish community. Would they lie, cheat, steal, and kill to protect their race? To protect their people? Think about their story. They see themselves as the vanguard of God, of God's law given to Moses, in the Torah, in the oral tradition, in the mystic tradition, they see themselves as the vanguard of God, of God's word, of God's law. They see themselves as repairing the world, putting the shards containing God together to save the world. And their story is of slavery at the hands of the Egyptians, captivity at the hands of the Babylonians, persecutions, pogroms, genocide. When they say we have a right to exist, we have a right to defend ourselves, that's a battle cry. And it says we will do anything. We feel entitled. We have a right to anything. And you think a couple of Europeans are going to stand in our way? You think some punk from Arlington Heights? You think some Spanish government, some Irish government? You think the Western Europeans? You think American conservatives? You think skinhead, trailer trash Nazis? Whatever they say about us, you think they're going to stand in the way of us? We take what we want. We say what will help us. We kill who opposes us. When they say they have a right to exist, they're saying we have a right to control American society, to secure our existence. Now, if the youth are being lost, this poses an existential problem to Israel. And if in particular, the youth in the right wing of America becomes indifferent to Israel, then they are truly alone. They have lost China, Russia, the whole Muslim world, Europe, Africa, Latin America. Who do they got? It's just us. And what is America's support conditioned upon? The Republican constituency in America. If it were up to the Democrats, we wouldn't support Israel. If it was up to the Zoomers, we wouldn't support Israel. It's Republican boomers that are keeping it together. Without America, they are alone. And without the boomers, they don't have America. So they need the young people in America. They need the right wing in America. Do you think that's why Netanyahu offered Charlie Kirk $150 million to support Israel? You think that's why it mattered to them so much? Netanyahu was going to open the floodgates, according to these reports, and unleash $150 million of Israel-controlled money that would probably come from America. It wouldn't come from the Israeli treasury. It wouldn't come from their finance ministry. Netanyahu would order it, and it would be Jewish-American billionaires that actually dispense the cash. He would double their money. Do you know how much money $150 million cash is? Charlie Kirk would overnight become a very rich man. He could be president. He could be kingmaker. He was offered a deal. All you got to do is work for Israel, work for the genocidal state that is subverting our sovereignty in our country. And why was it of such great importance to Israel? Because they knew that if they had Charlie Kirk, they would have the young right-wing men. Because Charlie Kirk, he's not just a live streamer. On the contrary, he's not just a debater. Charlie Kirk has a personal relationship with Trump. Charlie Kirk is the bad man for the GOP. And Charlie Kirk runs the largest youth organization for the conservatives in America. So he's a very powerful man. He's a very important piece on the board. If you got Charlie, you got the young, you got the money, and you got Trump's ear. Maybe you're a kingmaker. Excuse me. Maybe you're a kingmaker in 2028. That's why it was worth $150 million to Netanyahu. So they offered to give him all this money. He declined. Because he knew the money came with strings attached. That was a double or nothing. Look, the Zionists gave him all this money thus far. He's having doubts. Well, we will sweep aside those doubts by dropping literally a pallet of cash. Double or nothing. Will you work for us, yes or no? He said no. They said, come to Israel. Meet with me. Charlie Kirk said no. Now he's dead. Now, what about Bill Ackman? What about Bill Ackman and his fundraiser in August? Who the fuck is Bill Ackman? Bill Ackman is a Wall Street Jewish billionaire. Do you know that he is friends with Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, managing $10 trillion in assets? Do you know that Larry Fink is going to run the World Economic Forum in the stead of Klaus Schwab, who's retiring after a Me Too scandal? You know that Bill Ackman got the president of Harvard University fired because there was an anti-Israel protest on the Harvard campus? Do you know that Bill Ackman's wife is Israeli? She was born in Israel. And not only that, but she received money from none other than Jeffrey Epstein. And after October 7th, Bill Ackman shifted to the right. He put $1 million behind Trump and became very active in Republican politics, even though he's a lifelong Democrat. Bill Ackman hosted the the convention on August 4th or 5th of Turning Point Influencers. Here's the smoking gun that really brings it all home. Because, and I'm going to be really honest with you, when people said that Israel was behind Charlie Kirk's assassination, I said, don't be ridiculous. Charlie Kirk, and rest in peace, God bless his soul, Charlie Kirk, we all know, was supported by pro-Israel Jewish patrons. Until the day that he died, he never recanted his support for Israel. Publicly and openly, he defended the administration's cover-up of the Epstein files. He defended the administration's bombing of Iran. In the same interview with Megyn Kelly, he said, you're never going to lose me. I will always support Israel. Be that as it may. After Netanyahu offered to give him all this money, and he refused, Bill Ackman hosted an event at his home where Israeli mouthpieces like Seth Dillon, a Jew, and Josh Hammer, a Jew, Israeli mouthpiece working for Ben Shapiro in a previous job listing. Charlie Kirk refused to listen. He was offered a trip to Israel. He refused. When the FBI could not locate the alleged gunman on Wednesday, do you know who stepped up and offered a $1 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Charlie Kirk's assassin? Bill Ackman. And just who do you think that $1 million will be paid out to? It looks like it will be paid out to the alleged killer's father. Tyler Robinson was allegedly turned into law enforcement by his father. His Mormon father, the Mormon father who turned in his gay son dating a tranny who killed Charlie Kirk, is going to get a $1 million payout from Bill Ackman, the man who, according to friends of Charlie Kirk, menaced him for not taking Netanyahu's money and supporting Israel's war in Iran. Do you think Bill Ackman is just generous? He's a vigilante? Put another way, the Jewish billionaire that allegedly threatened Charlie Kirk, the Jewish billionaire married to an Israeli who took money from Jeffrey Epstein, who is, by all credible observations, working on behalf of Israel in some context. The guy that apparently menaced Charlie Kirk is the same guy who will pay a man $1 million for turning in his gay son, implicating him in the murder of Charlie Kirk. Anybody find that a little bit suspicious? This is a tweet, a real tweet that Bill Ackman put out last week. He said, quote, a number of people have reached out and or posted expressing concern that Tyler Robinson's father may collect a $1.2 million reward for turning in his son, which inspires a few thoughts. First, in order for rewards to be effective in finding criminals, the rewards need to be paid even if the recipient is a crook or worse. That said, in this case, if the father is found to have been involved or otherwise acted negligently in contributing to Charlie's death, civil litigation or criminal prosecution will reverse unjust compensation. I've also seen reports that suggest Tyler's family intends to waive its right to any reward. So yes, we will pay the reward if it is earned to whomever the FBI indicates provided the information that led to Tyler's arrest. To me, that might be the smoking gun. That might be the connection that slipped everybody's attention. So Bill Ackman allegedly menaced Charlie Kirk over Israel. Now Bill Ackman is paying $1 million to a Mormon man, turning in his gay son dating a tranny, implicating him in the killing of Charlie Kirk. I see a bit of a conflict of interest there. Now, with that being said, I'm not running with that. I'm not stating that as fact. I'm saying that requires careful scrutiny. It's not, at the minimum, there is the appearance of impropriety. That's not a good look. And that needs to be investigated. And I credit that observation to Arthur Bloom, who's being investigated in Virginia for calling somebody an Israeli spy. Go figure. He put me onto this. I'm not going to pretend I came up with it myself. But at the minimum, that needs to be investigated. And I'd be very interested if the father receives that payout. If he doesn't, then maybe there's nothing there. But I find that to be very conspicuous. Now, we're running out of time. I don't know if I'll be able to get to the Groyper angle. Maybe I'll talk about that tomorrow. I didn't anticipate spending 2 hours on all of this. We haven't even gotten into the super chats here yet. But that is the official story. That is the Israeli conspiracy. And as I said, I will leave it to you to draw your own conclusions. I continue to be convinced that it is probably more likely from where we're sitting now that Charlie was killed by some leftist. But we don't know that. We do not know that. And all these inconsistencies and discrepancies, these things need to be explained to us. And whether Israel was behind the killing or not, we have to get to the bottom of this alleged payment. And I would implore Candace Owens, release all the receipts. You have to release all the receipts immediately. Don't play games. Do not play games. If you have receipts, you need to release them fast. And the reason you need to release them is because they have time to put together their alibi. They have time to put together their story. Do not drag it out for the sake of your show. You know, I watched her show today and I was honestly disappointed. She promised receipts. We have seen no receipts from Max Blumenthal or Candace Owens. We've seen a lot of hearsay, unnamed sources, anonymous friends of Charlie Kirk. If Netanyahu offered $150 million and he turned it down, we need to see the documentation, if there is such a thing. If Charlie Kirk sent a letter to Netanyahu resisting his advance, we need to know the contents of that letter. If there is information to the contrary, we need to see it immediately. You cannot withhold that information. I did not know Charlie. I never worked for Turning Point or Daily Wire or Fox News, so I do not have this privileged insider information from the Jewish Club. But if anybody has that information, it must be released. If you have receipts, you can't play games and say, we've got the documentation. You better release it or else. No, doesn't work that way. You need to put the information out. Otherwise, it's irresponsible. And we need to get to the bottom of this. And by the way, we all need to demand that our Trump government, they have to get to the bottom of this. If it was Israel, if it was leftists, we need to know what threat we face. If Charlie Kirk is being gunned down for not taking money from a foreign state to support their war, that's a problem. If Charlie Kirk got gunned down by a terrorist cell of insane left-wing trannies, we need to know that too. And what we're getting from the government is not good enough. Trump is playing golf. Kash Patel is at dinner. They don't seem to know what they're doing. Trump is posting on Truth Social about football. Allegedly, one of his close friends, one of his important allies, is laying dead, and we don't know the killer, and we have no idea what's going on. There could be reprisals, there could be copycats. Where's the leadership? Where's the press conferences? And by the way, I am sick and tired of seeing the worst governor in America, Governor Cox from Utah, this pro-trans, left-wing, anti-Trump scumbag, constantly jumping in front of the cameras and giving campaign speeches. I have had enough of him. This country did not elect that dirtbag. This country elected Trump to appoint a DOJ and an FBI director that would get to the bottom of things like this. And where are they? See you in Valhalla? Fuck you. Posting about the NFL rules? Fuck you. Where's our vengeance? If we can't get justice from the government, you're going to get vengeance from the people, and it's going to be ugly. And I don't want to see that. I'm not encouraging that. That's not a threat. That is an observation. If you deprive the people of justice, if the enemies of society are not deterred by the government, there will be more bloodshed. And we're just not getting it. Where is the leadership? Where's the messaging? Where's the information? Where is the whole of government effort to get to the bottom of this,
Nick is
keep the American
spitting.
public apprised, to deter future attacks, and to ensure that this will not happen again? Where is it? And shame on all of the Trump shills for not calling this out. They will praise anything. The Cracker Barrel logo, the Department of War, the Gulf of America. And honestly, I was, and I'm not just trying to politicize this, but I was genuinely disturbed by Trump's reaction to Charlie Kirk's death. Isn't this your friend? They asked him about it the day after, and he said, yeah, anyway, so we're building the new East Wing. Are you serious? You got shot. This is your 31-year-old friend who supported you for years. You know him by name. Your son is friends with him. It doesn't seem like he could be bothered. He didn't go to the memorial. He's golfing. He's dancing at a sports outing. He said he got the news about Charlie Kirk. Oh, and I was in the middle of building the beautiful new ballroom. Really, man? What a disaster. So it's not actually my job or Candace Owens' job or Max Blumenthal or it's not our job to get to the bottom of arguably the worst political assassination in America in the century. It's the job of our elected leaders, our appointed leaders, the head of the FBI and DOJ. I'm sorry, wasn't Kash Patel supposed to be on the money, no pun intended? Wasn't he supposed to be the MAGA FBI director that would clean house? Wasn't it supposed to be different? What is going on? Enough is enough already. It is ridiculous. And they're wheeling out this douchebag in front of us, giving campaign speeches about unity. You know, Governor Cox, go fuck yourself. Wait, I don't want to see you anymore. I want to see the president. I want to see the FBI director. I want to see the attorney general. I want to hear a plan. I want to hear a message. I want to know that the enemies of society are going to be investigated and brought to justice, whoever they are. And not the least bit for politics. You think at the minimum, because this is a friend of the president, but I guess even that means nothing. So, as it stands, we don't know. And regardless of whether Israel is implicated or not, at the minimum, this shines a spotlight on how this society works. And whether they kill them or not, it's scary that we don't even know, isn't it? We all know they're capable. We all know they're willing. We all see the motive. And the motive is a ground war in Iran and not the cleansing of Gaza. It's deadly serious. And the last thing I'll say is this. For all these people that say, I don't care about the Middle East. Who cares about Gaza? Who cares about Israel? Is that the only thing you can talk about? What about immigration? What about everything else? I care about America. And I'm going to say this respectfully to people like Matt Walsh, who extended an olive branch, it seems. I'm going to say this respectfully because I've heard Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and they're ill. I've heard them say this, and I'm going to assume that maybe they don't know better, and I'll be respectful how I say this. You may not take an interest in Israel, but Israel takes an interest in you. Israel takes an interest in you and every American. As long as we have a voice in America, as long as we have a vote in America, as long as we Americans have a say over our lives and our society and our government and what it does with its money and its military, and as long as that is indispensable to helping this country evade accountability for its actions, they will take an interest in you and your family and what you have to say and how you vote and even what you think. So you may not care that much about Israel, and you may think that's one issue among others, and that doesn't matter, and we need to just get off that subject and talk about domestic issues, but they don't see it that way. They take an interest in you, and you must realize our country is besieged on all sides by foreign intelligence and manipulation. And in some ways, that's the only issue there is. That's politics. What if it was a tranny? What if it was some random tranny? Think about what a sick fucking joke that is. You have Charlie Kirk, a moderate Christian conservative, and some enraged tranny with Mormon parents gunning one another down, and it's not one another, but you understand. Meanwhile, the Senate voted not to release the Epstein files. Meanwhile, Congress gave another $650 million to Israel. Meanwhile, Israel bombed Qatar and is gearing up. The tanks are rolling through Gaza City, and they're getting ready for a war with Iran. So congratulations, you fucking idiot leftists. Congratulations, you stupid fucking faggots. And I say that somewhat affectionately. Congratulations, LGBT leftists or whatever. You shot some moderate conservative. Meanwhile, our country's being raped. Congrats. Good job. Now everybody's focused on internecine. Now we're doing the culture war. Now it's Christian parents fighting with their gay kids about fucking porn. Meanwhile, we have no independence. We have no sovereignty. So, and here's the funny part. If there is it's funny in a sick way. Here's the ironic part. Over the past few months, I have been making a concerted effort to unify liberals and conservatives. I really have. I tried. I really made a concerted effort to speak in a language that liberals might understand. I tried to demonstrate my objectivity. I tried to bring liberals into the fold. I tried to appeal to their animosity, their legitimate criticisms of Trump, their legitimate animosity towards Israel. I leaned out of the culture war intentionally. When a tranny shot up the school in Minneapolis, because it was the truth, but also out of sensitivity, I said, let's not blame the left or trannies. Let's look at this as nihilism, because I genuinely feel that's what it is. And you know what Hassan Piker said? He said, oh, this guy's just lying. He's cynical. And then glorifies violence against conservatives. Hey, Hassan, you idiot. Hassan, Destiny, hey, idiots. Do you know that this Zionist-backed Republican government would love nothing more? They're waiting, they're begging for the opportunity, for a reason to wipe the far left off the map. And not for the reason you think. Not because you support trans rights, but because the leftists protest Israel. Okay? That's why. Alex Karp is making products for Israel to murder people in Gaza. They are waiting, they're waiting, begging for an excuse to whip up the far right into a frenzy and to create a mandate to bring the government down on the far left. And you just gave them what they wanted. And instead, like your uncle, Cenk, of recognizing that, you play right into their hands. Right into their hands. Because you just can't get your mind off of sex. Because for the far left, those are the only issues that exist. Trans rights and gay marriage. Forget about, immigration, forget about healthcare, forget about what's happening in Ukraine and Israel. So nice going, nice job. And it may be a leftist, and the left is, they have their problems also. But it's just a little bit of perspective there. It's not to say the left doesn't exist. It's not to say they don't have nut jobs that want to kill us. Obviously they do. But you must recognize that we, and by we, do not mistake what I mean. We as American patriots, we as God-fearing Christians, people that actually love the living person Jesus Christ on the cross, we are fighting a multi-front war against a sophisticated adversary. Do not for one second think it's all or nothing, right versus left, or Christians versus Jews, or America first versus Israel first. This is a multifaceted war. And the right position is we can't have all these illegal immigrants here. We can't have black super predators stabbing people to death. We can't have left-wing nut jobs burning vigils of Charlie Kirk and wanting to murder conservatives. And we can't have Israel running our country. And that's an agenda I think people can get behind if we can just put forward a candidate, a party, a movement that says all the above. And I'm willing to compromise on other things, but that needs to be the ticket. You want this country to be stable? We need borders. You want this country to be affordable and economical? We need fucking law enforcement. You want the country to stay together? We can't have political violence like this. We can't have radicals egging on and glorifying terrorism, obviously. And if we want to be a nation, if we want independence, we have to stand up to Israel and resist the division that they don't create, but which they exacerbate. And the only way to overcome that, I'll reiterate my call last week, we must be not just innocent, not just merciful, not just forgiving, benevolent, magnanimous, charitable, not just those things, but we must be those things. We must also be wise, clever, cunning, smart. Do you understand? We must be both. And you can be both. We can be humane, we can be loving, we must be those things. We can be charitable towards our enemies, we can let God's love shine through us. It doesn't mean we need to be suckers. We need to be cunning too, for our sake and for the sake of our families. We're in a multi-front war. We need to destroy the left, the radical left that seeks to murder us. We need to make our country safe. We need to keep the Israeli foreign influence out of our country. It's a multi-front war. And the consensus needs to be against them both. It needs to be against these sicko, freak nihilists that are okay seeing the country get invaded and people get murdered for no reason and people get shot for their opinions, and also against the people that are doing that same thing in Gaza. We need something like a Christian right wing and liberal fusion. Against the, they want to rally conservatives against the woke left and the Muslims. I want to rally liberals and conservatives against the radical far left and against the Zionists that want to influence America. That's the ticket. And it's not going to be this Cracker Barrel, nicky-knack, conservative culture war slop. And it's also not going to be this third worldism either. Anyway, so that's that. But I do want to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say, but this is why I'm demanding accountability. This Trump government needs to give us the answers. Until then, we must be...
He's right. There needs to be a plan. There needs to be a speaking up, of focusing on what they're actually doing. And there are problems with the mainstream narrative. There's a bunch of stuff regarding Israel and Charlie Kirk and the misrepresentation there. And I'm not over here saying that Israel was the ones who did it, but there are questions that answered. I am one who's saying that their influence on American politics is or needs to be removed. Pretty unbelievable. It's pretty unbelievable. That it's like this in the Trump administration, and that's what I knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors for Donald Trump last year. This time, last year, September, our final push before the election, the October, literally every day, 100 plus doors a day. And it's been a big letdown in a lot of ways. A lot of performative stuff. He mentioned, I think it was in Twitter. Excuse me. Max Blumenthal, Marjorie Taylor Greene. He represents a lot of us. It's not as much party politics, about America first and America only. It's something that Vivek has said a lot of times. The people that we elect to run the government need to represent us, America. Pretty crazy. So glad that we were able to watch those two. Some important information coming from that. We've got about 15 minutes left. Maybe we'll watch some health videos. Then we'll pray it out. Ordering shout out. Let's see, Matt Wall, Michael Knowles. And then we're
I had no
let's see. Videos, man. Ugly
I
truth
used
about
to think that
avocados.
avocados were the most amazing superfood that you can possibly eat. I would recommend them, tell my patients to consume these, until I found this. When they arrive at the grocery store, many times they put them to this gas chamber. Then they artificially
You know,
ripen them
I love
with something
Rumble,
called
but
ethylene gas. The
Dr.
problem with
Berg
this is when you do
uploading low quality on.
I used to think that avocados were the most amazing superfood that you can possibly eat.
But
I would
it's a
recommend
1080
them, tell
here.
my patients to consume these, until I found this. When they arrive at the grocery store, many times they put them to this gas chamber. Then they artificially ripen them with something called ethylene gas. The problem with this is when you do this prematurely, you no longer help develop the natural flavor chemicals because you're creating in this artificial ripening process. You don't develop the phytonutrients. That's why when you buy it, it looks perfect on the outside, but on the inside, it's terrible. Anytime you force something to ripen, it's very unnatural. Let's talk about avocado oil. I read this research study that they evaluated 22 different samples, looking at all the major brands and evaluating unrefined versus refined avocado oil. They really dove into the oxidation of this oil. I really want you to get this. So we cut an apple in half. On the left side, I put lemon juice. On the right side, I did not. As you can see, it's a lot darker than the left side. That's oxidation. Oxidation is like the rusting out of something. When it comes to avocado oil, there is a tremendous amount of oxidation occurring. My question is, what the heck's going on? I'm spending a lot of money on this. Just think about an avocado, right? And compare that to seed oils like corn oil or cottonseed oil. They're very different because the avocado oil doesn't come from the seed of the avocado. It comes from the pulp. You get vitamin E, which is an antioxidant. You get chlorophyll, which also is an antioxidant. The big problem with consuming seed oils or even avocado oil when it's oxidized is it's going to add more inflammatory things to your body. In some of these products, they found other oils in these avocado oils, like soy oil or canola oil, as a way of diluting it and selling it at a cheaper price. They found 82% of avocado oil is not what it says it really is. And then they do a process called deodorization. They're taking the odor out. You can't taste this oxidation, but does that mean the oxidation's not there? No, it's still there. It's still highly inflammatory. Question is, how do they get away with it? Well, this is what I found that was actually quite shocking. There is no official U.S. rules on these things. In other words, olive oil has an international definition of what extra virgin means, but not with avocado oil. There's no legal binding definition of the way that they're supposed to process these things. This has opened up the door for a lot of corruption. There's all sorts of scams going on, trying to dilute avocado oil with other oils, but on the label, you can't tell the difference. What was really shocking in this research study, which I'm going to put a link down below, there were some products that had zero avocado oil in them. Instead, there was soybean oil, canola oil, despite the labeling of pure. Don't worry, it gets worse. Country of origin.
Oh my
It's probably
goodness.
grown in California and they just process it there and they ship it to me, right? If it says a product of the US, it can be grown in China, blended in Mexico, but it's bottled in the US. This makes it a product of the US. Unfortunately, the regulations, the enforcement is just not there for avocado oil. And then we get to the expiration date. There is no law that you have to have an expiration date on these bottles. On this bottle right here, it says best used by, and then they give you a date, but it doesn't even mention the word expiration date, and it doesn't even mention when this oil was processed. It makes it very difficult to know how long that material has been sitting in that bottle. But I will point out one thing about avocado oil is you want to get it in the dark bottles in glass, not clear plastic, because light can also oxidize the oil. Next point, guacamole. Many of the guacamoles in fast food restaurants don't contain much avocado. They're replaced with green peas, hydrogenated oils, food starches, of course. It's kind of like green goo. And then I also want to mention the point about cosmetics. They say they use a lot of avocado oil or so-called avocado oil. Yet the first thing on the list is soy oil, and the second is palm oil, and then mineral oil. And of course, at the very bottom, you see that they've just put this tiny bit of avocado oil, creating this illusion that it's all avocado oil when it's really not. How do we navigate through this? If you're going to buy avocado oil, make sure it's a dark bottle and glass. Make sure it actually has an expiration date. Some companies put that on there. Don't always go for the absolute cheapest brand. If you could also find the harvest date, that would be the best thing to look at, because you don't want to buy a product that is like a year old. Also, when you look at the actual oil, it should be slightly tinted green. It shouldn't be clear unless you buy something that's refined, because we want the chlorophyll in there. When you buy actual avocados, I recommend that you buy them from California, like the Haas variety. Not the ones in the bag that are really cheap and that are really shiny. Sometimes they put this wax on it to make it look way better than it really is. With me, I'll do the gentle thumb press. Obviously, if it's too ripe, you could feel that your thumb goes too deep. Or if it's not ripe enough, it will create no indentation. I would be very wary of buying any guacamole from a fast food restaurant because it has literally less than 5% avocados, if not zero. All that being said, I want to tell you avocados can be super healthy for you if you get the right kind, because they have very healthy fat profiles. They only have 10% of the omega-6 oils versus seed oils are like 40 or 50 or more percent. One of the really cool things I like about avocados is the amount of potassium they have, because in one medium avocado you can get 5, 6, 7, 8 up to 900 milligrams of potassium from one avocado. And on top of that, avocados are loaded with magnesium, which is another very powerful electrolyte. The absolute best thing for you to learn right now is what potassium actually does for your body. If you have not seen this video, you need to watch it right now. I put it right here.
Did he though? Come on. That's the one thing, Dr. Berg. You saying you're putting these videos? I mean, this is pretty eye-opening. Like, lack of regulation, avocado oils. I'm pretty much not going to buy avocado oil again. We even buy coconut oil. Just with olive oil having increased in price so much. But occasionally we've gotten avocado oil. Now we've gotten avocado oil in the dark glass containers. We're worried about the various stuff from the plastic getting mixed in with it, but the oxidation component was not really considering that. You don't buy guacamole pre-made. And the avocado's the spraying. We'll have to look more into that spraying on it at the grocery stores to artificially ripen the avocados and then it not naturally developing the same sort of nutrients. How you can avoid that? Not totally sure. We have is potassium. We'll have to watch that. Maybe we can watch that tomorrow about potassium. Watch the link. see some other people, because we're just starting to follow very Derek Prince. That's a good start. But yeah, we're gonna pray it out. Thanks for, again, if you're still with me or you're watching it at a later point, appreciate it. Day 2, we're up on YouTube today. So about that, hopefully get everything else ironed out. And just we're trying to improve day by day. And so let's pray. Heavenly Father, God, Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for this opportunity to learn more, God. We just ask that you would reveal the full truth, everything surrounding Charlie Kirk's assassination, God. We ask that you would change this nation, Lord, to be more like you, that you would awaken more to the truth of your gospel, God, that you would mobilize the church, that we would grow in boldness and courage, and that your name would be lifted on high across the world, Lord. We ask that you change our lives individually and collectively, God, and change our hearts. Bless us. And help us to be holistically healthy. We love you, Jesus. Pray. Thanks again. Peace.